heartbeat of today's stock car racing. But reaching for victory sometimes means a payment on a debt. ESPN, your #1 auto racing network, for the first time visits the famed Darlington International Raceway. The track they used to call the Lady in Black has not been kind to some of the greatest drivers from years gone by. But now it's 1984, and one thing that's been consistent here at Darlington since 1950, the fans. They always have a good time, but they come here to see some of the most exciting racing in the nation. It's race day in Darlington, South Carolina. ESPN is here for live coverage of the TranSouth 500, our first visit to this historic racetrack built in 1949. The weather, 76 degrees, winds are 5 to 10 miles an hour. It's partly cloudy now. We had rain this morning, but only a 20% chance of rain during the running of the race. Hello from the broadcast booth located high above the main straightaway at this 1.366-mile racetrack. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Newber. Larry, it's a track they used to call the Lady in Black. Now they call it the track Too Tough to Tame. In any case, the history here is significant.
Bob, you know, when I came into the area this weekend, I had about an hour-and-a-half drive from the airport to the Darlington area, and I was thinking, what do you say about Darlington at the top of the show? And, you know, you can't script it, because if you did, the script would take the entire show. Suffice it to say that this is the racetrack that ushered in the modern era of stock car racing as we know it.
Last week, Tim Richmond won the Northwestern Bank 400 at North Wilkesboro, making him the 10th different winner in as many races, a modern-day record.
And not only that, but there are still a number of people on the NASCAR list who have not won in that 10-race game dating back to the last part of last year. Listen to the drivers that if they win today, the streak continues. Harry Gant, Earnhardt, Marcus, Ruttman, Brooks, Bouchard, Baker, Bodine, Pearson. Any one of those guys could win today, and that string would still be intact.
Benny Parsons was in the broadcast booth last week. He's on the pole for today's race. With him is the editor of Stock Car Racing magazine, Dick Berggren. Dick?
Benny, with a speed advantage of 1.57 miles an hour over the second-place car, you must feel awfully good about starting here.
Dick, I really couldn't hear what you were saying because of the engine's running, but we talked about the speed advantage. In 15 or 20 laps, that advantage is going away. I hope then that the chassis will stay as good as I think it is right now.
How are you going to handle the first lap?
Well, I'm going to try to lead the first lap if I can. If I can't, I'll just have to take whatever they'll give me.
The engines are running on pit road. Back upstairs to you.
We'll have a radio hookup with Benny throughout the course of the race, and we'll be back to introduce the 37 other drivers in a moment. Today's TranSouth 500 is brought to you by Pontiac. Test drive a new Pontiac at your Pontiac dealer, because at Pontiac, we build excitement. And by Briggs & Stratton, the power in power equipment. And by the Asfor Motor Oil, Pennzoil, protection worth asking for. The starting lineup for today's TranSouth 500 in just a moment. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina, the running of the TranSouth 500. This is a 367-lap race, a total of 500 miles. And here are the 38 drivers who will make up today's starting lineup. On the pole from Ellerbe, North Carolina, driving car number 55, the Copenhagen Chevrolet, Benny Parsons, qualifying at 156.3. Outside, Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia, in the number 9 Coors Ford. In row number 2, car number 15, the Wrangler Jeans Ford, driven by Ricky Rudd from Chesapeake, Virginia. Outside of row number 2, car number 98, the Levi Garrett Chevrolet, the driver from Charlotte, North Carolina, formerly from Upland, California, Joe Ruttman. In the 3rd row, from Sardis, North Carolina, in the number 28 Hardy Chevrolet, K.O. Yarborough. And outside of row number 3, Lake Speed from Jackson, Mississippi, in the number 1 Bullfrog Knits Chevrolet. In the 4th row, the defending champion of this race from Taylorsville, North Carolina, in the number 33 Skull Bandit Chevrolet, Harry Gant. Outside of row number 4, Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama, driving the number 12 Budweiser Chevrolet. In the 5th row, Number 11, Darrell Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee in the Budweiser Chevrolet. And outside of row number 5, Terry Labonte from Trinity, North Carolina in the number 44 Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet. The rest of the starting lineup: in row number 6, car number 90, Dick Brooks, and number 21, Buddy Baker. In the 7th row, Tim Richmond and Dale Earnhardt. The 8th row, Ron Bouchard and Bobby Allison. In the 9th row, Richard Petty and Jeff Bodine. Row number 10, David Pearson and Dave Marcus. In the 11th row, Bobby Hillen and Lenny Pond. 12th row, Jody Ridley and Rusty Wallace. In the 13th row, Kyle Petty and Mike Alexander. And in row number 14, D.K. Ulrich and Greg Sachs. Row number 15, Phil Parsons and Jimmy Means. In the 16th row, Tommy Cale and Connie Saylor. In the 17th row, car number 23, Morgan Shepherd and 48, Trevor Boys. 18th row, Buddy Arrington and Ronnie Thomas. In the 19th row, car number 17, driven by Clark Dwyer, and number 4, driven by Tommy Ellis. As we indicated to you, we have a radio hookup with the pole sitter, Benny Parsons. Let's try to make contact with him right now. Benny Parsons, this is Bob Jenkins in the broadcast booth. Do you copy me?
Potatoes. It's Bob Jenkins. I read you loud and clear.
All right, Benny, we're getting near the start of the race. What's going through your mind right now?
Trying to figure out how to beat this forward down in turn 1.
Thank you, Benny, and we will be communicating with you throughout the course of the afternoon. Good luck to you. And we also have radio hookup today with the Jeff Bodine team. And, Jeff, this is Bob Jenkins in the broadcast booth. Do you have a copy on me?
Yeah, Bob, how about it?
Sounding good up here. A lot of cars in front of you. What's your strategy here on the opening few laps of this race?
Well, Bob, we just hope there isn't any trouble. We're going to try to avoid all of that we can. Here at Darlington, it gets pretty rough at times. Yesterday in the late model sponsor race, we avoided all the accidents and finish. That's what we're going to try to do today.
A lot of good luck from all of us here in the broadcast booth. We'll be talking with you.
Okay, Bob, thank you.
Darlington International Raceway, too tough to tame. It's a 1 3/8 mile paved oval. The front stretch is 1,228 feet long, 70 feet wide. The back stretch, just about the same length. The turns are 23 degrees in banking in turns 1 and 2. They are 100 feet wide, but only 30 feet for the groove, and they are 1,264 feet long. Turns 3 and 4 are banked at 25 degrees, 160 feet wide, but again, only 30 feet of running room, 1,970 feet long, and pit road is 1,055 feet long. The significant thing about this racetrack is the fact that there is only 30 feet that is considered the groove, and if you get out of that groove, you are in trouble.
I don't think you measure the groove here in terms of feet or lanes. There's the groove coming down the front stretch, coming out of turn number 4. I think you measure the groove here in terms of miles per hour. I'd say the groove here is about 120 miles per hour wide. Unfortunately, you're above 120 almost all the way around.
Well, the driver who doesn't seem to have any problems here, the winningest driver at Darlington International Raceway, 7-time TranSouth 500 winner in car number 16, David Pearson.
One of the most dramatic moments in all of automobile racing, the start of a race at Darlington.
The pace car is still on the racetrack, but we expect it to dive into the pit area, and there it goes. The 38 drivers in today's TranSouth 500 from Darlington come down the main straightaway looking for green. They get it, and the race is on. Parsons in car number 55 jumps out into the lead at the start of the race. He comes off of turn number 2 and gets sideways, and Benny almost loses it coming off of turn number 2. He loses several positions, and Ricky Rudd now moves into the lead. They go into turn number 3 where the groove is only one lane. Dale Yarborough is running in second position off of turn number 4 to complete lap number 1. Rudd is in the lead.
He's in trouble.
Yarborough has picked up the lead from Ricky Rudd, and you can see that Benny Parsons has a problem. It looks like that the sheet metal is rubbing on the left rear tire of that Copenhagen Chevrolet. Here's a replay of what happened as Benny came off turn number 2.
Bobby almost had the ultimate disaster. He was just too hot coming out of turn number 2. 37 cars, each weighing 3,700 pounds behind him, and here comes Benny into the pits.
Benny is coming into the pit area. trouble has struck early for the pole sitter of this race, Benny Parsons, who out-qualified the other competitors by over 1.5 miles an hour. Now it is Darrell Waltrip who is pulling alongside and passing Cale Yarborough as they go 3 abreast down the backstretch. Into second position, Ricky Rudd and Cale Yarborough battle for the spot. Harry Gant is right there too.
Trouble in turn number 3. I think it's Brooks on the inside of the racetrack. There just wasn't enough room for 3 cars.
And he spins up onto the racetrack and several other cars are involved. So the yellow is displayed over Darlington International Raceway, and the area that we have talked about, there being only 1 lane, that is the area going into turn number 3, has bitten several drivers early.
Bob, it started up front. There were cars going 3 abreast for second position. These guys, that's Bobby Allison, I believe, were innocent victims, if you will, of what was happening. It started in the second position. And once again, disaster for Bobby Allison. What a terrible year in terms of luck.
The defending Grand National champion has had all kinds of problems in the races so far. He has won one race this year, but the others have plagued him with terrible problems. Benny Parsons is also back out on the racetrack, but he is stalled. He is stalled down in turn number 1. There is Dick Brooks in car number 90. You can see the damage to the rear end of that car. He is under power and coming into the pit area. They are working feverishly in the pit area on Richard Petty's car and on Bobby Allison's car. Let's take a look at what happened up in turn number 3.
Now this is the aftermath. Dick Brooks had to get on the brakes because everybody in front of him slowed suddenly going into turn 3. They were going in 3 abreast. And you can see Brooks got down to the apron, spun back up into the crowd. Allison, Petty, and Bodine. I did not see Jeff Pitt. I don't know if he had severe. No, Jeff is now in the pits. Had nowhere to go as Brooks spun back up into the oncoming traffic behind him.
Excitement on lap number 3. They continue to work on Bobby Allison's car and on Richard Petty's. We'll be back in just a moment to find out if these guys can get back in the TranSouth 500 from Darlington International Raceway. Back at Darlington International Raceway, where the caution is being displayed over the track because of an accident up in turn number 3. Let's go down to Dick Bergeron.
Bobby Allison is behind me. His crew is working feverishly on the right front corner of that car. He has got very severe damage. The right front wheel is perhaps a foot further back in the chassis than the left front wheel. To get this car back on the racetrack isn't going to take a miracle. It's going to take a major miracle. Richard Petty also had trouble. He has been in here once. It appears as if the front end geometry on his automobile is also very severely disoriented. And Benny Parsons, the last thing he said to me before he went in this race is, Dick, remember when you touch the wall here, it really does a job on the suspension. The cars become very, very difficult to handle. And there's a lot of guys that are going to be fighting with that for the rest of this afternoon.
All right, Dick, Benny's car is on the hook and being taken toward the backstretch. We'll try to make radio communication with him here.
Thank you, Red.
Benny is having conversations with members of his pit crew right now, but there is the Copenhagen Chevrolet, car number 55, the car that started on the pole here, on the hook, going toward the backstretch. Tough luck for Benny Parsons in car number 55. Well, we've completed 7 laps right now, and about 3 of them have been run under caution. We had 3 leaders in the first 3 laps: Ricky Rudd, Cale Yarborough, and Darrell Waltrip. As far as the standings are concerned right now, as they come down the main straightaway and complete lap number 7, in the lead is Darrell Waltrip in number 11, Ricky Rudd running second, Cale Yarborough is third, Harry Gant fourth, and Joe Ruttman is fifth. In 6th place is Tim Richmond, 7th is Bill Elliott, 8th is Neil Bonnet, 9th Terry Labonte, and in 10th place is Buddy Baker. Well, let's try to make contact with Jeff Bodine, who was involved in that incident up in turn number 3. Jeff, this is Bob Jenkins up in the broadcast booth. Pretty close call for you there in turn 3, huh?
Yeah, it was a little too close, Bob. We got involved into it. This track's so narrow, there just isn't any room to escape. If there is a problem, we got caught right up against the wall.
Well, Jeff, the car is behind the wall. What damage was sustained in the incident up there, and you're going to be able to get back out there?
Well, we're going to get back out. It busted a tie rod end, and it looks like... Oh, but they're up there working it now.
All right, Jeff, we'll continue to watch your situation and hope you can get back out there.
Thanks, man.
And let's try to talk now with Benny Parsons. Benny, this is Bob. I know you're very disappointed. What is the problem?
I don't really know right now, Bob. When I hit the fence over there, I guess I knocked something out of alignment. I made the pit stop. When I started to take off, I either broke a transmission, a rear end, a drive shaft, something in the powertrain broke. What can I say?
Boy, it was a close call for everybody because you got pretty significantly sideways coming out of 2, and luckily everybody got by you.
I guess that, well, I mean, the fact of the matter is I just simply lost the thing, and I would guess that the rain overnight washing the oil and bar off the racetrack made it just a little slipper than I thought it was going to be. I just simply lost it.
All right, Benny, thanks very much. Pace car continues to hold the field under caution as we take a look at the number 78 car, driven by Lenny Pond. Well, Benny Parsons was nice enough to take us on a lap around this historic track. Let's go to Benny.
In all the promotional material preceding the TranSouth 500, they kept calling it Darlington, the racetrack too tough to tame. There's a lot of truth to that because I think maybe this racetrack is too tough to tame. You can go down in turn 1 or turn 3 1,000 times, but yet that 1,001st time, it'll bite you. It'll just reach out and grab you, suck you in the fence, and when they ask you why, you have no idea. I tell you what, let's take a ride around the racetrack, and we'll just show you how tough it really is. We're going down the front straightaway. You know, it looks wide. It looks like it's very comfortable. But at 170 miles an hour, it really doesn't take long to get down to turn 1. We're almost to turn 1. Now we start backing off the throttle. We hit the brakes. We really hit them hard. We got to check the car because when we get down in here, we can't be running over about 140, 150 miles an hour. We want the left front to touch the apron. It'll throw the car back up right in the middle of the racetrack, almost in the middle. Then back on the throttle. You start bringing the car down the hill, down the hill. All right, now we're in the groove. We're really in the groove. We want to be right, almost touching the apron as we come off here. Now we want to start the car going back out towards turn 2 because the natural tendency is for the car to go back out there. Now, down the back straightaway, again, it looks like a long ways, but really at 160, 70, 80 miles an hour, it doesn't take long. We're going now almost to turn 3. We back off the gas. We hit the brakes. Now we cut across this corner. We cut across it. And again, we want to touch the apron with the left front tire. That'll kick the car back up. Now here, we want to go higher than we did down in turns 1 and 2. Up high, almost to the retaining wall. And you say, boy, what a lovely corner. But all of a sudden, folks, the racetrack goes dead left. And you got to know when to turn. You got to start turning and bringing it funnels down to one place. You got to be in this place if you're going to get around Darlington. And then down the front straightaway, and the procedure starts all over again. And it's the same thing. You got to do exactly the same thing time after time.
And this, folks, is what's so tough. Seeing the start-finish line and somebody in that box waving the checkered flag.
Well, there'll be no checkered flag for Benny Parsons today as trouble struck him on the very first lap of the race. We have just gone back to green after the incident involving several cars up in turn number 3. Dick Brooks, Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, and Jeff Bodine among them. Darrell Waltrip is the leader as they go down the backstretch into turn number 3. Cale Yarborough is running in second place.
Bob, you know, we had a very brief but hard rain this morning, even hail, and I think it changed the track conditions significantly more than any of us ever predicted that it would. There's a great battle coming down the front stretch right now. That's Ricky Rudd is involved in that, Harry Gant, Joe Ruttman, Neil Bonnet, and Tim Richmond. And that's where the trouble on lap 1 began. Cale Yarborough was also in that mix with Rudd and Gant. They went 3 abreast down the backstretch into turn number 3. Somebody had to duck back in line when they hit the brakes going into 3, and basically Dick Brooks was on the tail end of the chain, and it snapped him quickly, and he went into a spin.
Ricky Rudd in 3rd place. Harry Gant 4th. There is the 5th place car driven by Joe Ruttman. Down off of the 4th turn, they come again onto the relatively flat straightaway. Harry Gant moves to the inside of Ricky Rudd, and he passes Rudd, and Harry Gant moves into 3rd spot. There is quite an interval between Harry Gant and the 2nd place car driven by Cale Yarborough, as Yarborough and Waltrip have jumped out into the lead. Now Ricky Rudd settles back into 4th position, and Joe Ruttman is 5th. Tim Richmond running in 6th position. Tim, the winner at North Wilkesboro last week. Dick Brooks, who was involved in the incident up in turn number 3 a few laps ago, is with Dick Bergeron.
Dick, what happened up there?
Well, I was or 5 cars there in front of me, those 3 or 4 lead cars. They went down a backstretch and they got all sprung out. And then they, when it went in the 3rd turn, they kind of stopped and I went underneath them. When I hit the apron, it just turned right and I hit Ruttman just enough to spin me anyway.
Is this car too badly damaged to race?
I couldn't hear what you said.
Is the car too badly damaged to go back out, or do you think you can make it?
Well, I don't know. It busted the tie rod on the right-hand side, and they've got that fixed. We'll have to see what happens next.
The up and down is the jack. They're jacking it up and down, working on it as we talk to Dick Brooks. They are going to try to get back out again.
The battle is for 4th position right now. There is Harry Gant running in 3rd. The battle behind him between Joe Ruttman and Ricky Rudd, and Joe Ruttman passes Rudd to pick up 4th spot. Rudd back to 5th. Tim Richmond still running in 6th. 7th position is Terry Labonte, and 8th is Neil Bonnet. They go down the backstretch into turn number 3. Once again, there are your leaders, Darrell Waltrip and Cale Yarborough.
What really upsets the driver's rhythm in this race and the smooth flow of inertia of the race car, you do something here at this track that you do, I don't think, on any other super speedway. That is, you hit the brakes significantly going into turns 1 and turns 3. The cars all react differently when the brakes are applied, and then you're right back on the throttle. It really makes going around the corners, particularly entering 1 and 3, rough and rocky. And you'll see from the long-distance shots, sometimes it looks like the cars are almost stopping going into turns 1 and 3.
So Darrell Waltrip is the leader at this point of the race in the number 11 Budweiser Chevrolet. Started this race in 9th position. He is 37 years of age. Chasing him is Cale Yarborough, who makes his home in nearby Timmonsville, or he used to be from Timmonsville, now making his home in Sardis. But Cale Yarborough owns several businesses here in the Darlington area. You saw Dick Brooks, who we talked with just a few seconds ago, back out on the racetrack in the event. Now we had a chance to talk about the situation here at this famed racetrack with the leader of the event right now, Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell, this racetrack, do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you feel? Well, it's a love-hate situation. Like to win here, hate to race here. It's one of those kind of deals that you know before you ever start. It's like going in a ring with Muhammad Ali. Like if I was going in a ring with Muhammad Ali. I know he's going to knock me out. I just wonder when. That's kind of the way this racetrack is. You got 500 miles, 3.5 hours. You wonder if you're going to get knocked out in that period of time. You just hope that you don't.
Darrell Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee, leading the TranSouth 500 at this point, with Yarborough running 2nd. And in 3rd position is Harry Gant. 4th is Joe Ruttman.
Cale Yarborough has been right on Darrell Waltrip's back bumper since the drop of the well about lap number 3, so he's content to stay there. Meanwhile, back in 5th position on back, make that 6th on back. They've really been trading paint, and we mean literally paint when you're talking about Darlington. Running by himself in 5th is Richmond, then in 6th is Labonte, followed closely in 7th by Bonnet, then Rudd, then Baker, Elliott, and then David Pearson.
Lake Speed also in that contest for position. We'll be back with more live coverage on ESPN of the TranSouth 500 from Darlington, South Carolina.
Bobby Allison's crew is trying to perform a major miracle here on pit road. They have just replaced the spindle on the car. They have torches out here that they've cut some of the sheet metal away with. Power chisels they've cut some of this car away with. They even borrowed Harry Gant's porta-power to push the lower A-frame forward. They are absolutely working their brains out here trying to get this thing back in. Now, this is the same car that Bobby Allison won the Fall Southern 500 with at this very same racetrack. And those of you who watch us a lot on ESPN saw this car blow its engine in Michigan while Bobby Allison was in domination too. And it's the same car that Bobby Allison won Rockingham with. So this is a love-hate car. This is one that either goes real well for you or something like this happens.
So Bobby continues to watch the situation that his crew is trying to do. There is Waddell Wilson. And there is Phil Parsons, who has come in for another pit stop. And he had an incident, at least a touch with the wall a few laps ago.
Bob, I think so. I think that he skidded out of control. And if he didn't hit the wall, he was close enough to make it count, I'll tell you that. But I think he touched the wall between 3 and 4. He got a little more than a Darlington stripe. heavy smoke was coming out from underneath the car. I think he had a real well rubbing against a tire.
Well, you can see how the race has closed in. The third and fourth place competitors are now right up on second place, Cale Yarborough. There are the first four. Darrell Waltrip is the leader of the race, followed by Cale Yarborough, then Harry Gant and Joe Ruttman. And so far, a good performance by Joe Ruttman, who's continuing to look for his first Winston Cup Grand National win.
Well, drafting is a factor here. It's not nearly as much as it is on the big tracks, but Ruttman and Gant, you see there, the fourth and the third place car. Harry, of course, the green car. Joe, the yellow and white car. They were about, 100, 150 yards behind Waltrip and Yarborough about 10 laps ago, and they have gradually just sucked themselves right up to catch up, at least with Cale. We notice that now Darrell, you can see the interval there, has opened up about 7 or 8 car lengths between himself, that's Waltrip, and the second running Yarborough. But Gant and Ruttman are breathing down Yarborough's neck. It'll be interesting to see if they're just content to stay there. There's Harry again, or try and put a move on.
Darrell Waltrip is currently second in the point standings. He wound up second in the point standings last year, losing the championship to Bobby Allison in the final race of the year at Riverside, California. So far this year, Darrell has won one race, that being the Bristol 500. He was second at Richmond and third at Daytona. He was sixth at North Wilkesboro last weekend and 10th at Rockingham and Atlanta. There is Cale Yarborough from Timminsville, South Carolina, and there is Junior Johnson, the crew chief on Darrell Waltrip's car, also the owner of Neil Bonnett's car. Down the straightaway once again, completing lap number 29.
This race will go 500 miles, 367 laps, so we have to get into about the 73rd lap before 1/5 or 100 miles of this race are complete. So still a long ways to go, but this is not the kind of racetrack, as we go back and look at David Pearson, Ricky Rudd, this is not the kind of racetrack that you want to leave your TV set for. Just a word about Ricky Rudd. He started up in third position. As we take a close-up look at David Pearson, Rudd has backed up in the racing parlance. Bob, he's back around 12th or 13th, and about every 3 laps somebody else gets around. He's not hooked up. It's the handling.
Yeah, he was one of our leaders in the early stages of the race, but has been falling back rapidly since then. David Pearson, currently in 11th spot, has won 10 times on this racetrack. Right ahead of him is Jeff Bodine. Now, Jeff was in the accident up in turn number 3, came in for a pit stop and lost several laps, so he is not on the same lap as David Pearson and Ricky Rudd, but he is back in the race.
David Pearson, the recognized king of the super speedways. He has more super speedway wins than any other Grand National stock car driver. It's been quite some time since David has tasted champagne in victory lane. As a matter of fact, it was since 1980. This race back in 1980, as Jeff Bodine, in a very sportsmanship-like gesture, moves down to the inside and lets the faster cars go by. 4 years this month, 4 years this race since David Pearson has won. Boy, would he like to break that streak.
Right now, he's in 7th position. Right behind him is Ricky Rudd, and right behind Rudd, also in the Wrangler car, is Dale Earnhardt. I'm going to go back up front and see what's happening with the leaders, and there are the first 3, Waltrip, Yarborough, and Harry Gant. Looks like Gant would like to find second position here. He goes low on the racetrack coming off of turn number 4 and down the straightaway, but cannot pass Cale Yarborough. And so Harry Gant settles back into 3rd place. Joe Ruttman running in 4th right behind Gant. Now the leaders begin to approach some of the slower cars on the backstretch. Tommy Gale in number 64 moves aside and lets the faster cars pass by. And now they will be concerned with Clark Dwyer in car number 17. That's the next car. They go high. Dwyer drops to the low side of the track, and they pass easily in turn 3.
Look at Yarborough fight and dog that traffic. Tremendous traffic driver. Exhibition right there that Yarborough just made. That was a statement from Cale Yarborough. Boy, don't give Cale Yarborough any extra room in traffic, and he's going to get you.
We have completed 34 out of 367 laps in the TranSouth 500. Darrell Waltrip is leading with Yarborough 2nd and Gant 3rd. We'll be back with more of our live coverage after these messages. Live as we present a lightweight 10-round match involving Tyrone Crawley and Danny Sanchez, and a 10-round middleweight bout between Davis and Tony Suero. Top Rank Boxing Thursday, April 26th at 8:30 Eastern Time on ESPN.
Well, there's the battle for the lead. It is still Waltrip with his constant hounder so far today. Cale Yarborough in second. Hope Your Favorite is among the top 14 or 15 as we watch this battle shape up for the lead. Run down real quickly. Who's still in it? Up near the top, Gannis third, Ruttman fourth, Richmond fifth, followed by Labonte, Bonnet, Buddy Baker, Lake Speed, Bill Elliott. Then comes David Pearson in 7th. In 12th is Earnhardt. 13th is Rudd. And 14th is the number 75 car of Dave Marcus. Those are the 14 trendsetters, but they are spaced out over more than one half of the racetrack. And guess who is back out? Well, he was out momentarily. Dick Berggren said it would take a pocket full of miracles, and it looks like that Gary Nelson and crew has done it again.
Well, there are virtually no aerodynamics on that car. You can forget that. But nevertheless, Bobby Allison goes out to look for a second Winston Cup championship. He is 34 laps down, but nevertheless, every lap counts.
Bob, just one last comment about Bobby Allison's hard luck. Bobby and family and crew, boy, our hearts go out to you, because this guy has been as fast as anybody all year long, and it's just unbelievable as we now look at a slowing and smoking Neil Bonnet. It's unbelievable what has happened to this guy's neighbor, Bobby Allison. Both Bonnet, who we're looking at now, and Bobby, of course, from Hueytown, Alabama. He said they were neighbors. It looks like the Alabama gang here at Darlington today.
Neil Bonnet pulls into the pit area. He was running in 7th spot when the trouble developed. And this, of course, the teammate to the leader of the race, Darrell Waltrip. Neil Bonnet comes in. Doug Richard is the crew chief on the car. Doug, of course, was injured rather badly at Daytona. He leads the other crew members taking a look at what's going on in the engine compartment. Let's go to Dick Berggren. Maybe he can tell us.
There's a lot of smoke coming out from the right rear quarter of the car. It's awfully difficult to tell exactly what it is. Could be a brake, could be an engine problem, could be overheating. At any rate, he's back out again. There's no indication of any leaks whatsoever here thus far.
It was a 22-second pit stop, Dick, for Neil Bonnet, and David Pearson is also in the pit area, and the hood was up, but now it is back down on that car, and it appears that the crew chief is telling David to shut it off, and it could be all over for David Pearson. Meanwhile, on the racetrack, they continue to run in the same order as they flash by the start-finish line and the thousands of spectators gathered here for the TranSouth 500. It is Darrell Waltrip leading with Cale Yarborough second, Harry Gant running third, and fourth place belonging to Joe Ruttman. You'll remember last year in this race, Darrell Waltrip was leading rather comfortably. But late in the race, he had a problem, and Harry Gant won the event. Here is another driver who appears to be in trouble. That is Lake Speed, and you can see on the left front of the car, it looks like the tire is flat.
Yeah, Lake Speed has done very well this year, the few times that he's raced, particularly on the big racetracks. Here's a guy who, since he came up about 3-4 years ago, seems to go very well, former world go-kart champion, seems to go very well on the big tracks. And look what's happened here up front. Harry Gant bided his time. He must have spent 15 laps bird-dogging Cale and this guy, Waltrip. And Gant is, while we were away, kind of snuck around and all of a sudden popped up into second.
Harry Gant now in second place. And Cale Yarborough back to third, with Joe Ruttman still in a very close fourth position.
Harry's got to be thinking about last year, Bob, and his formula for success last year was to cruise around at better than 150 miles an hour. Watch everybody else drop out as Neil Bonnet has once again returned to the pits. Gant won this race last year. And you know how many laps he led? 2. The last 2. That's it.
That's all that counts. There is the work being done on the Neil Bonnet car. His teammate, Darrell Waltrip, continues to hold the lead here at Darlington. Here they are coming off of the fourth turn, and a lot of race traffic in front of the leaders. Let's see how Darrell handles this situation. Bobby Hillen goes to the inside, and Waltrip is able to pass. Harry Gant is unable to. Now he'll be able to get around as they go into turn number 2. But some very close competition there in turn number 2. Now they're going to get by him on the backstretch.
Well, you saw in the piece that Benny Parsons gave for us that what happens when you brake, the car darts out of the lane that you put it in going in. The car jumps about a half of a racing lane. And you saw a vivid example of that last time through turns 1 and 2. Waltrip was alongside of Hillen. Hillen hit the brakes, went into the first corner.
We have a spin on the back backstretch. Kyle Petty. Petty is in trouble, spinning and bumping the inside wall. Kyle Petty, who did so magnificently last weekend at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, finishing in 5th place, runs into a problem coming off of turn number 2.
Well, Maurice Petty, who built all those racing engines that won so many victories for Richard Petty, is now building the engines for Kyle. As Bob mentioned, he did very well last week. They were very optimistic this week. And what this will bring about is just about everybody probably coming into the pits. There's a lot of activity, a lot of scurrying around in every pit up and down the front stretch here. Of course, some of the field also pits on the back stretch, but all the front runners will be crossing that stripe, half on the racetrack and half in the pit area. Maybe it might be as many as 80% in the pit area. This is going to be a yellow that will bring on wholesale pit stops.
All right, and while Darrell Waltrip is thinking about coming into the pits, his teammate Neil Bonnet has gone back out there after having done some work on his car. There is the pit that Darrell Waltrip will be stopping at. The signboard will be held for him. Drives low onto the racetrack and goes into the narrow pit entrance of Darlington. And here come Waltrip, Gant, Yarborough, Rudman, Richmond, and all of the other contenders at this point. Darrell Waltrip getting a drink of water, and they're changing the tires on the right side of the car. There is Cale Yarborough and the work being done on his car. Also in Dale Earnhardt, Bill Elliott, Terry Labonte, Ricky Rudd. There is again the Waltrip pit stop with Junior Johnson overseeing the situation. And look at the activity on pit road. On the racetrack, I think there are about 6 cars. Look at Tim Richmond getting out quickly. That is exactly what caused a victory last weekend for Tim Richmond at North Wilkesboro. He was in and out of the pits quicker than anybody else. It allowed him to get into the lead late in the race and hold it the rest of the way. Richard Petty, with severe damage on the right side of that car, moves back out of the pit area onto the speedway. So we've had our first series of pit stops here on lap number 48 as Kyle Petty brings out the yellow, spinning in the backstretch. We'll be back with more in a moment. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina, Darlington International Raceway for running of the TranSouth 500 for Grand National Stock Cars. Let's go down to Dick Berggren covering the pit area.
And here is what has put the pole sitter, Benny Parsons, in the garage area. He's going to try to get back out again, but this is the drive shaft that he sat on the pole with. The universal joint is broken in half. The drive shaft is bent. That's entirely the problem. They've got a new one in. They've been working carefully on the car. Benny does plan to go back in again. A few garages down from us, Jeff Bodine's car is up on 4 jack stands, and there's a whole crew of people underneath that automobile. The exhaust system is out from underneath it. They're going to try to get back out again, too, but, boy, they've got a lot of work ahead of them as well.
All right, Dick, and there is Rusty Wallace in car number 88, the Gatorade Pontiac, and Rusty is the leading rookie at this point as far as point standings are concerned. This is a very unusual racetrack because it involves a rookie test. Here again is Dick Berggren.
Driving cars at over 150 miles an hour in close competition is a tall order at any facility. But here at Darlington, driving is especially difficult. In fact, it's so tough that this is the only track on the Winston Cup circuit where each of the drivers is required to take a rookie test if he hasn't run here in Grand National competition before. In the past, that has even included a winner of the Indianapolis 500. Friday, before the Sunday race, the drivers are convened in a room and they're shown films of various and sundry competitors crashing here at Darlington. They're told, be consistent, be smooth, don't try to break the track record, just try to keep your car in one piece. Then they go out and they practice under the watchful eye of both NASCAR and veteran race drivers. If they pass the test, they're allowed to take their time and try to qualify for the event. If, on the other hand, the committee of drivers and officials decides not smooth enough yet for Darlington, they load the car and they go home and try again another time. Rusty Wallace, you're a very experienced race driver, but they're making you take a rookie test here at Darlington. How do you feel about that?
Well, Dick, it really doesn't bother me at all. Some of the best drivers have had to take the rookie test here, and myself, Phil Parsons, Clark Dwyer, a lot of the drivers are taking them, so it's just part of the ball game. You know, I might be experienced in short track cars and things of that sort, but Grand National cars are quite different. And I feel like I need to follow a procedure NASCAR has set forth at Darlington here to take a test like this.
What's the most impressive lesson that they've taught the young rookies here so far?
Well, we saw film on it in the rookie meeting, and it's not only can rookies get in trouble here, but the veteran drivers can too. They showed us a film, about a 20-minute film, and I'd say 80–90% of it was veterans that got in trouble. So the track is very difficult, very demanding, and it can reach out and bite you at any time. And not only the rookies are in an enviable position, but all the veterans are also.
Does this racetrack worry you?
Yeah, it does. You know, after watching films on the crashes and what could happen, watching Cale Yarborough go out of the ballpark and Junior Johnson getting creamed, and then going out here and just racing on a one-lane track, it's very hectic out there, and I just got to concentrate 110% all the time.
Darrell, your rookie year here, you had a special rookie inauguration, didn't you?
The first time I came here was 1973, and Jake Elder was my crew chief. I had a 71 Mercury at the time, and I'd never been to Darlington, only ever heard about it, listened to it on the radio, and always just imagined the worst racetrack in the world. I got here, Jake and I get in a car, and we start around the racetrack, and we go down here in the first turn, and he says, now, you see this spot right here? That's where Cale Yarborough went out of here in 1965 or whatever it was. Go around a little further. See this spot right here? Well, this is where Joe Weatherly and Curtis Turner damn near killed each other. We go a little bit further, and right here, well, two cars hung together going into three right here, and one of them ended up out on the road out there by the restaurant. Come around a little further. See right here, see this hole in the wall, see this big skid mark right here? That's where Richard flipped end over end and took him out of racing for about 2 months. Come on around, come back in the garage. He says, all right, now you go out there and practice a little bit. I said, Jake, I'll be back in a minute. I got to go to the bathroom. I spent 2 days in the bathroom.
Darrell Waltrip is not in the bathroom now. He's in his race car and leading the TranSouth 500, but he's receiving a serious challenge from Cale Yarborough. Now, the car leading everybody else down the straightaway is driven by Lake Speed, and he is a lap down, but he has made up the lap and is running very strong. Yarborough to the inside, way down on the apron, and takes over the lead. Also, Tim Richmond challenges and passes Darrell Waltrip, and so does Harry Gant.
And so does Terry Labonte.
Waltrip is falling back very significantly here. He has lost 5 positions, and everybody continues to go under him. So there may be a problem with the Darrell Waltrip car, or is it just strategy?
No, I don't think it was either. I think it was just one of the places he was caught on the track. You got to be very careful. Darrell's been in trouble on this racetrack before, and he knows you cannot make any sudden moves, and it's much too early in the race to be trying to take chances.
Let's go down to Dick Berggren in the pit area.
David Pearson's day is over. He thinks he's blown a head gasket in the car. He said first the temperature started to rise, then it started pumping out oil. The car has been parked. He will not return. Meanwhile, keep your eye on Timmy Richmond. His car has suffered for a long time from cracked cylinder heads. It seems that about every other race he suffers from one. Well, this morning in the garage area, when they cranked up their best race engine, sure enough, a cracked cylinder head. Incredibly, the crack was on the outside. The cylinder head was just leaking water freely into the open environment. So at the last possible minute, they pulled the engine out of that car and put the backup engine in it. And that is what Tim Richmond has under his hood right now.
Well, it's running well for him. He is second to this guy, Cale Yarborough. Tim Richmond able to pass Darrell Waltrip a lap ago and now is in second spot. Third is Harry Gant. In fourth position is Terry Labonte. Fifth is Darrell Waltrip, and sixth is Joe Ruttman. Richard Petty is also in that lead pack of cars, but he is also at least a lap down because of the accident that he was involved in.
We'll go back to that Waltrip story just one more time. I'll repeat again because a lot of people are asking about why did Waltrip back up so quickly, Bob? I've been watching him while we were listening to Dick Berggren, and I really think that it may have been not necessarily a calculated move, but something that Darrell just reasoned through at the point of contact of combat. It was much too early in this race to put up a chicken fight with somebody and get yourself knocked out. He's running comfortably. He's about 5th or 6th right now, but I think he's okay.
This is a very good point. Joe Ruttman is right on his back bumper, but nevertheless, this is a long race, and there are a lot of laps to go. We're on lap lap number 60 of 367. So there is a lot of time, and anything can happen. Joe Rutland moving to the inside of Darrell Waltrip in turn 3 and passing him. So Waltrip drops another position. The lead, meanwhile, continues to be held by Cale Yarborough, with Tim Richmond running in second spot. And again, we have to point out that one of the reasons that Tim is up there in second position is the excellent work that the crew did on his pit stop. Last weekend at North Wilkesboro, they got him out before anybody else on the last pit stop, and it caused him to win the race. Tim right now running in second spot. And back in the field, Darrell Waltrip now being challenged by Bill Elliott in number 9. Elliott started in second place in the event.
And has been running 6th, 7th, 8th all race long. Bill Elliott does this as a habit, you know. He runs consistently and smoothly all race long, and he's usually right in there with a shot at victory at the end of every race. Unofficially, we got Elliott and Waltrip in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think 6th and 7th. 6th and 7th, the two of them right now on the racetrack. That's Elliott in the red and white Coors number 9, and Waltrip in the red and white Budweiser number 11.
And there is the leader once again, Cale Yarborough. Again, the car ahead of him is driven by Lake Speed. He is a lap down, but Lake, without question, is able to stay about the same distance ahead of Cale Yarborough, and he's doing a fine job out there. Benny Parsons is back in the race. Car number 55, the Copenhagen Chevrolet. Benny with a problem on lap number 1. Getting sideways in turn number 2. And then the drive shaft broke on the race car. They have replaced it, and Benny is back out there, but several laps down and not a threat to win the TranSouth 500.
No, but I tell you, he sure is racing. He's not out there just taking a Sunday. Is it Sunday? Yeah, it's Sunday. He's not out there just taking a Sunday drive. He is out there running for like Jack the Bear, trying to do as well as he can. Benny Parsons would like to show something here in this race, even though he was very disappointed over what happened there in the first lap or two.
If you have been watching our show from its beginning, you know that there have been tremendous and exciting accidents here at Darlington, South Carolina. One of the most spectacular accidents occurred to the guy that's leading the race right now, Cale Yarborough. He went over the wall. We asked him if he remembers that crash.
Well, you know, that was quite a wild ride I took back in 1965, I think it was. I went completely out of this place, and, you know, a deal like that is something you never forget. It stays with you for a long time, and I don't think I ever come here without thinking about going out of this place. So it happened down in turn 1, so I'm always a little bit careful down there. I kind of walk on thin ice going in turn 1.
Cale Yarborough has never won the spring race here at Darlington. 5 times he's won the Southern 500, most recently in 1982, but this one has escaped his grasp.
Buddy Baker in car number 12 is, rather 21, is beginning to move up through traffic. There is Buddy following Richard Petty, and Buddy right now is in 8th position, trying to pick up another spot.
You can see evidence of earlier combat on the inside or left side of Buddy Baker's race car. I guarantee you, a Woods Brothers car never comes to a racetrack that is not spit and shined and polished. Buddy Baker has already worked a couple of hours, even though we've only been about 50 minutes into this race here at Darlington.
We began to notice a few laps ago that Harry Gant was just ever so slightly not going as fast as he was, and we continue to see this situation. Harry Gant, the defending champion of this race, in the Skoll car, is coming into the pit area. Harry Gant down off of the track onto the apron, headed for the pit area, and here is Dick Berggren to call this pit stop.
This is anything but a routine pit stop. They are on pit road and absolutely ready for Harry Gant. They're going to give him a pair of right side tires, at least a pair of left side tires, rests against the wall in case they decide to put those on as well. The crew now, right side up, tires off, preparing to change and put on the new ones. The gas is already in the car. Wow, that was a fast pit stop. Gant roaring out of here, both back tires smoking.
The Chevrolet roars down pit road and goes back into competition. It probably was a tire problem. Something on the car just wasn't right to Harry.
It must have been, Bob. I don't think Dick is with us. I wanted to ask him that, but that's my analysis also, that apparently something didn't feel right. And you see, another one of the potential hazards here at Darlington, the traffic is so tight and the lane so narrow that some in the middle of the backstretch before he can actually slide up and get into the racing groove. It took Harry almost 2/3 of a lap before he could get back up to speed.
Dale Earnhardt is right behind Harry Gant. And also Dave Marcus is in this battle for position. So we have about 5 cars running nose to tail here, battling for position in the TranSouth 500.
Dale Earnhardt, who will be having a birthday a little later on this month, of course, is a man who was a former national champion of the Grand National Stock Cars of the Winston Cup circuit, a guy who attained that lofty status at an earlier age than the vast majority of other Grand National Stock Car drivers. He's moved over to a good friend this year, Richard Childress, to race that car. He retained the Wrangler sponsorship. Earnhardt hasn't been quite as good, perhaps, as consistently as they wanted to be, but he's still been in the top 5.
And Dave Marcus moves alongside and passes Clark Dwyer at car number 17. Dave from Schuyler, North Carolina. And here is Dick Bergman with observation on this particular crew and driver.
Well, Dave Marcus seems to require a chassis set up somewhat differently than the majority of competitors. As long as 5 years ago, Roland Walonica said, Dave Marcus' chassis is different than anybody else I've ever set a chassis up for. Well, the crew of the 75 car has worked and worked and worked all weekend on the car to try to get it to suit Dave Marcus. Now, they brought it here set up the way that Neil Bonnet was very happy with it last year, but it just really didn't please him very much. So they've changed it all around. Dave Marcus is out there doing well.
You know, Dick, a couple of races ago back at Bristol, Dave Marcus was about the fastest guy on the track at the end. That's a pretty tricky racetrack to set up for, as is this one. Do you think that Marcus's personal characteristics are an advantage or a disadvantage here at Darlington?
Well, I guess we're going to have to really wait until the absolute tail end to determine that. For sure, Marcus is one of the headier drivers, one of the tougher drivers in this league, and he's been around a long, long time. He certainly knows what he wants. That's one of the key things that any crew has got to do. They've got to please their driver. They've got to make him happy with the chassis setup. Even if nobody else can drive the car that way, the guy behind the wheel has got to be tickled pink.
Dick, I'll tell you, he's really going. He just passed both Earnhardt and Ricky Rudd in the last 3 laps while we've been talking.
Dave Marcus is a 5-time winner on the Winston Cup Grand National Circuit. His best finish this year was a 4th at Bristol. He also finished in the top 10, a 9th at Rockingham. There's the leader of the TranSouth 500 with 74 laps completed. Cale Yarborough. Second position belongs to Tim Richmond, and third is Terry Labonte. We'll be back with more live coverage on ESPN. Bob Jenkins, Larry Nuber, and Dick Bergman back at Darlington, South Carolina, the Darlington International Raceway, and the TranSouth 500. Here are the top 5 with 76 laps completed. Cale Yarborough, the leader. Tim Richmond, second. Terry Labonte is third. Joe Ruttman, fourth. And Buddy Baker now runs in 5th spot.
And from there, it's Waltrip, Elliott. Gann is not in that group. Remember, he's a lap down. Marcus is in 9th. Or we make that 8th. Ricky Rudd is 9th. 10th is Bouchard. 11th is Earnhardt. 12th is Morgan Shepherd hanging right in there on the lead lap. 13th is Jody Ridley, also on the lead lap. And 14th, Tommy Ellis, also on the lead lap.
Tim Richmond doing a fine job in that old Milwaukee Pontiac. There's the young man who grew up in Ohio, now makes his home in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Tim, the winner of last weekend's North Wilkesboro Northwestern Bank 400. He has finished in the top 5, a couple of top 10 a couple of other times so far this year at Bristol and at Richmond.
A little more than a 1/5 of the way through the race. We have completed 79 of 367 laps. That puts us a little bit more than 100 miles. So 20% down, 80% to go. Yarborough has the lead. He's opened up just a little bit over the second running Tim Richmond, but he is not streaking away as we have seen him done in the past at other tracks.
Jody Ridley in car number 84 is smoking and low on the racetrack, will be coming in for a stop. Jody Ridley, 41-year-old from Chatsworth, Georgia, and Dick Bergman indicates to him that he had trouble on a stop earlier. We have a tire flat on the right side of the car, the crew going out to work on it.
Well, what a disappointing break, because
he was in here just a lap earlier, and when he tried to take off, the left front tire simply fell off the car. The lug nuts had not been properly tightened when he left. Now, that's exactly the same circumstance that happened to David Pearson here several years ago, and he wound up out of his ride as a result of that thing. Ridley made less than a lap. He's back in again with a flat right front tire now, so things are really not going his way this afternoon at Darlington.
So Jody Ridley is back in competition. This is only his third race of 1984. Well, I guess not, because it looks like he's pulling back into the garage area, so they're going to be doing some more work on that Jody Ridley car. There is Terry Labonte and Richard Petty on the racetrack, with Labonte now running in 5th position. He has dropped several positions here in the last couple of laps. He was running 3rd, but both Joe Ruttman and Buddy Baker have been able to pass him, moving him back to 5th. Back out on the racetrack as we watch this battle here is Jeff Bodine, who has been in and out all afternoon, now back out there.
Now, something that we're checking on by our unofficial count, Richard Petty is only 1 lap down. Remember, he was involved in that first lap fracas over in turn number 3, triggered by Dick Brooks and the leaders. Petty is behind on the race.
Oh, and Tim Richmond is in trouble on the main straightaway.
Wow.
He has made contact with the wall, spins to the 4th turn side of the start-finish line, bringing out our 3rd caution of the afternoon. Tim Richmond, who is running in 2nd spot.
Well, from the looks of things, we only caught the aftermath. It looked like nothing more than a typical bite from Darlington. You come out of turn number 4, it snaps off onto the front stretch. There's Tim moving around in the car. Looks like he's trying to remove the steering wheel to extricate himself. There is the end of it. Richmond apparently, and we say apparently because we see Tim Richmond sliding down the front stretch with no other cars involved. And what happens so often when you come out of number 4, the track flattens out, it turns hard to the left, and the speedway just jumps up and grabs you.
There's the look at Tim Richmond. I think that the car directly behind Tim when he made contact with the wall up there in turn 4 was rookie Clark Dwyer, and if so, Clark did a fine job of maintaining control of his car. Tim obviously okay, runs across the pit area, and he now waits for his car to be taken off of the race. Tim Richmond, winner of last week's race, out of this one at Darlington.
Doesn't look like he has the full face helmet. We've seen him use the full face helmet a couple of times in the last month. He has raced with it. But
there's Clark Dwyer, and that was the car right behind Tim when he made contact with the wall up in turn 4. I don't think he made contact with Tim, and he did a fine job of driving. He's only 20 years old.
Well, here's a point. Remember Lake Speed, who had gotten around Waltrip and Yarborough at the beginning of that last green flag segment? He's been cruising around out there. Now he gets to go all the way around the track, and Lake Speed is not only on the same lap with the leaders now, but he'll be right up there with them. And if he can show the same muscle that he has shown for the last 25 laps, we got to start thinking about Lake Speed as a contender for first place.
There was a late model sportsman race here yesterday on this racetrack, and Lake looked very, very strong. He did bump the wall in turn number 3, and it put him out of contention, but he ran very strong during the race. Well, we'll be back with more live coverage from Darlington, South Carolina, as we present the TranSouth 500. The dark clouds are beginning to roll in over the speedway here in Darlington, South Carolina. There is a chance of rain this afternoon, and we hope for the best. Hope we can get this entire race in. We'll find out what our Super Sunday Cloud is all about April 29th when defending Pac-10 champion Stanford hosts Southern Cal in a college baseball thriller. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. Pacific Time from Sunken Diamond in Palo Alto, California. College baseball, USC versus Stanford. Here are the top 5 with 88 laps completed. Darrell Waltrip the leader, Terry Labonte second, Buddy Baker is third, Dale Earnhardt fourth, and Ricky Rudd fifth. The standings have changed somewhat in the last few laps because of the caution period that we are now under. The caution brought out by an accident involving Tim Richmond coming off of turn number 4. His car is being taken off of the racetrack, and here is the replay of the last portion of this accident.
You know, there's no embarrassment about crashing at Darlington, Bob. Remember a few years ago, Richard Petty's worst accident of his Grand National stock car driving career happened just about like that. Also remember a spectacular crash by an ARCA driver, Ralph Jones, when the car exploded in flame coming down the front stretch.
This week, Tim will not win the Grand National race like he did last week, but fortunately he is okay after this accident. In fact, he is with our Dick Berggren.
Timmy, what happened out there to you?
Well, I really don't know, to tell you the truth. It was either the rear end locked up on the car in turn 4 or we cut a tire down because it just snapped out from under me. And I mean, it was gone before I knew what was going on. I was looking out the right back window seeing what was going on and where we were going. And unfortunately, it took us into the outside retaining wall in 4. And I'm okay, Mom and Dad and everybody, but the car's not. So I don't know. We had it going there. Cale was running real well, and we were just, hanging on there to wait and see what would happen at the later part of the race. We weren't going to try to go up and challenge him yet, but we didn't get a chance to go up there today.
It looked like a pretty solid lick.
Pardon me?
It looked like a pretty solid lick.
Oh, yeah, it was a good one. I didn't really feel it that much because the back end of the car wadded up and took most of the impact, so I didn't really feel it that much. So, I just saw it happen. I can hear the car coming right now. There it goes. It's not good. I ain't going to be driving no more today unless it's in somebody else's car.
And the scraping noise you hear is what's left of Tim Richmond's race car being drugged by us.
And once again, turn 4 snatches out and bites another driver. We are under our 4th caution period of the afternoon. This field is slowed. We'll be back with the resumption of our coverage from Darlington, South Carolina in a moment. Back at Darlington, where bad luck has struck the Bud Moore crew and Ricky Rudd, who has pulled behind the wall. Here is Dick Berggren.
And this is definitely not a routine pit stop. They are in the process of changing the differential in this car. The entire ring and pinion assembly is about to be removed. They've just drained the oil down into it. They've got a new ring and pinion ready to go back into it again. This is exactly the same problem that Bobby Allison suffered from last weekend at North Wilkesboro and the weekend before at Bristol. Blown rear end. Ricky Rudd almost certainly, however, will be back on the speedway as soon as this is accomplished.
Rudd looked like a sure winner last weekend at North Wilkesboro, but wound up in 3rd place. He has a win already this year in Grand National competition at the Richmond 400. Well, we mentioned a little bit earlier during the Tim Richmond crash that he didn't appear to be wearing a full-face helmet. A lot of drivers are going to it, and here is a report.
There's an increasing amount of concern for facial safety in Grand National racing. Driver Jim Herbert, for example, was severely injured at Daytona. His face was severely damaged when he wore an open-face helmet like this and had a very, very hard frontal impact. This is the type helmet that's very popular on the circuit, but this is the type helmet that is becoming more and more popular. This is Kyle Petty's helmet. He's not wearing it in races yet. He's just practicing with it. It's got a full-face front, and in the front piece is a flame arrestor to try to keep flame out of the face in the event of a serious fire in the race car. Simpson Safety in California is manufacturing carbon fiber helmets. This is Timmy Richmond's helmet. It's also got a flame arrestor in the front, but Simpson says this new carbon fiber helmet is actually lighter and at the same time stronger than the more popular fiberglass helmets.
The field is preparing to go green. Now, NASCAR scoring says that there are 7 cars on the lead lap. Dave Marcus, Cale Yarborough, Lake Speed, Joe Ruttman, Bill Elliott, also Tommy Ellis, and the number 4 car of Tommy Ellis, and number 23, and that, of course, is Morgan Shepherd. Now, a lap down, Richard Petty, also Rusty Wallace, and they tell us that Darrell Waltrip is a lap down, along with Terry Labonte and the number 21 car of Buddy Baker. All of those guys apparently got caught somehow in this caution situation and fell a lap down.
A major development in this race. I don't know what happened. There were a lot of people coming in and going out. It was not the time for a stop. A lot of people had hoped to go up to about lap 110 or 120 before we had our next stop. And we've got some surprises who are a lap down. Waltrip, Baker, Labonte, and Bouchard. Those 4 guys have been in the top 12, 15. The case, of course, of Waltrip leading this race. Somehow they lost a lap in the pits.
They go 3 wide on the straightaway. Now trying to find single file through turns 1 and 2. And Darrell Waltrip is passing Dave Marcus coming off of turn number 2 down the backstretch. But remember, NASCAR scoring tells us that Darrell Waltrip is a lap behind the leader of the race, Dave Marcus, in 75. Off of turn number 4, this will complete lap number 94. Petty moving alongside Dave Marcus, but this guy, Darrell Waltrip, leads the others down the straightaway, but a lap behind.
Marcus is in trouble.
Turn number 3 once again as he made contact, I believe, with Kyle Petty, and that was all she wrote for Dave Marcus.
He did an excellent job of keeping that car up along the wall. He took the car into the wall, I believe intentionally. Obviously, he would have liked to have missed it, but he turned right, definitely. He knew there were so many folks behind him, and Dave Marcus, in a way, he sacrificed himself for the benefit of the rest of the field.
It was not Kyle Petty, it was Buddy Baker that he had original contact with that caused Dave to go high on the racetrack and make contact with the wall.
Waltrip now, who leads the pack, he had lost a lap in the pits. He's all the way around, and Waltrip is back up with the leaders.
Here's a replay of the accident right beneath the scoreboard here, showing him in the lead, but Dave Marcus quickly falls from competition. Did a good job, though, holding the car against the wall and then going down to the inside of the racetrack after everybody had seen what was going on.
You know, Bob, sometimes you hit the wall and the tie rod breaks or the steering arm and you don't have any control. That could have been the case. You know, sometimes we journalists give drivers a little more credit, maybe. But in that case, I really think that Dave Marcus was in control of that race car, because it looked to me like the car was headed down the track and he just jerked on her to the right.
Dave comes in for a stop. Here's Dick Corcoran.
Well, we're about to see some very creative body work done on Dave Marcus' car. They right now have an air chisel on the left front. They're going to cut the left front fender away from this automobile. They're changing the right front fender. The whole nose is pushed in. The real question, the real key, however, relates to the mechanical condition of the car, which so far even the crew has not yet diagnosed. So far it appears to be just a right front tire, a lot of sheet metal damage. But once Marcus gets back on the racetrack, that's when the proof will tell. Meanwhile, it has started to rain harder here, and for the first time this afternoon, we can see raindrops on the racetrack itself. And there goes Marcus back out again. He will surely be back in again before this is done and over with. That fender is only barely hanging on.
Well, we're not halfway through, so we're not talking about a situation like we had in Richmond a couple of years ago when Dave Marcus was a surprise winner because he was leading when the rains came. The leader of the race is Cale Yarborough. We are only 96 laps into this event. We got to be around 180 for us to be halfway. So if we get a rain delay, we're still a long ways from calling it a day and calling it an official race here. But Yarborough is the leader, and in second position is Ruttman.
Well, we can begin to see the raindrops fall on the glass in front of us here in the broadcast booth. We are under caution at Darlington. We are back once again at Darlington, where we have completed 98 laps of the TranSouth 500, a 367-lap race. The most recent caution brought out when Dave Marcus bumped the wall in turn number 3. Jeff Bodine is back out on the racetrack. We'll try to contact him by radio and see how things are going for him. Jeff, this is Bob Jenkins in the broadcast booth. It's been kind of an up-and-down day for you, hasn't it?
I think it's been more down than up, Bob. We've had a rough day. I guess we used all our luck yesterday in that late model sportsman race. But we're out here. We're doing our best now. We broke a transmission just a little while ago. They changed that, and let's hope it all stays together now.
So everything mechanically that was wrong with the car has been repaired now.
Yes, we're in pretty good shape there. We're just a long ways behind, but I'll tell you, the way these guys are driving out here, there might only be about 10 cars left at the end of this race. Seems like they all took a crazy pill or two since this morning.
Jeff, what about the rain situation? We do see a few drops on the glass here in front of us. Are you noticing it on the racetrack?
Yeah, it did rain a little bit down here in the third and fourth corner, but it's quit now, and it didn't make the track wet or anything. I think we'll be all right in a few laps.
Jeff, we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Of course, we're also trying to communicate with Benny Parsons all day long. Benny had that very long pit stop, and He is now back out on the racetrack. Benny, this is Larry Newber up in the broadcast. Benny, this is Larry Newber up in the broadcast booth. Can you read me?
You know, I was just talking about, I was just thinking about you guys. Yeah, I read you.
Well, were they all good thoughts, Benny?
Well, I was going to tell you that if you play that piece on how to drive around the racetrack, you should add to be sure and not let it get too loose getting off the second corner.
Yeah, that would have been timely, Benny. How's your race going at this point? It looked like you were out there and really able to stand on the hammer, though, in that last green flag segment.
The car feels pretty good. We're about 50 laps down, and you wonder what we're doing out here. But we've got to come back in September and run the 7,500. So we're trying to figure out what it's going to take to win that race in September.
Benny, we've had some rain on the racetrack. Do you think that in any way contributed to the situation up in turn number 3 at Marcus?
I don't think so, really, because it hasn't that much rain fell when they had their problem up there.
Is the track looking pretty dry now, in your opinion? Are we ready to go back to racing?
Yeah, we're ready to go. It's not raining any place now. The track is dry.
Benny, we'll be keeping an eye on you. Good luck, okay?
You guys think of your first Darlington race?
Oh, gee, I don't know, Benny. It could be a little more exciting, I guess. I don't know how.
I tell you, the racing this weekend has been tremendous. Later on ESPN, you'll see a late model sportsman race, and you'll want to make a note to watch that race. It was tremendous. Jeff Bodine, as he indicated when we were talking to him a few minutes ago, was in that race and ran very well. Well, the situation is now, because of this caution period, several of those drivers that we talked about being a lap down have now made up the lap and are back on the lead lap, namely Darrell Waltrip and Terry Labonte and Ron Bouchard and Richard Petty and some of the others. Cale Yarborough continues to lead. Joe Ruttman is now second, with Bill Elliott third. In fourth position is Morgan Shepherd. Fifth is Lake Speed. Sixth is Tommy Ellis. In seventh position is Darrell Waltrip. Eighth is Buddy Baker. Ninth place, Ron Bouchard. 10th is Richard Petty. And then after that, the number 3 of Dale Earnhardt and Terry Labonte.
The story's there. Morgan Shepherd in the fourth, and Richard Petty is back on the lead lap. Boy, whenever Richard Petty gets on the lead lap and you start getting close to halfway, you got to start thinking about Petty in the finish.
And despite the fact that there was a lot of damage to the body of that car, Richard has been running very well. A lap down, the number 88 car of Rusty Wallace, and Harry Gant is also a lap down at this point.
It's also going to be interesting to watch Lake Speed. He's in the first 5 cars on the outside lane there. As a matter of fact, I believe he is the 5th one in line. Yes, he is, on the outside lane. Remember how quick he was earlier on when he got his lap back. He passed both Yarborough and Waltrip, who at that time were battling for the lead. So let's see if Lake Speed still has that type of velocity that he had earlier.
Cale Yarborough leads them down for the 2 abreast start. They actually go 3 wide in the straightaway. Now single file into turn number 1, and Cale Yarborough has the lead. The car right behind him, driven by Bobby Allison. He was in the pits for several laps because of body work, body damage that was done during the accident. So he is not on the lead lap, but Joe Ruttman, who is right behind Bobby Allison, is in second. Off of turn number 4 they come, with Cale Yarborough leading. Lap number 102. We have had 10 lead changes in the race so far among 6 drivers. We have been cautioned on 4 different occasions for 27 laps. Now Joe Ruttman has passed Bobby Allison, so there are no cars between Ruttman and the leader, Cale Yarborough. A strong race so far for Joe Ruttman.
Good point, Bob. Let's talk about Ruttman. Remember 1983. Joe Ruttman, particularly in the first half of the season. Ruttman's the 2nd car in line there, the Levi Garrett gold and white machine. Led so many races early on. Matter of fact, Joe Ruttman started leading NASCAR races back in 1982. We talked about that race that Dave Marcus won. Remember that Ruttman was leading just before the caution flew for rain. Something broke in the car, and he spun out down the front stretch, lost the race. Ruttman has not been a leader as much in 84 as he was in 83. But he's had a strong year, but he hasn't really come close to winning yet. But boy, he's right up there in the thick of it today.
And Larry, look at the 4th car in line. Allison goes to the inside, now the 3rd car in this line. Lake Speed, he has passed Bill Elliott a lap ago, and now Lake Speed is running a very solid 3rd position.
Let's see how he handles it, too. You know, will he charge or will he plant himself there? There he goes. He's going towards the front.
Toward the inside. inside, looking inside at least on Joe Ruttman at the end of the backstretch, but thinking better of the single file that you must go through turn number 3. And so Lake Speed perhaps setting up for a pass here on the main straightaway. He moves to the inside of Joe Ruttman. At the start-finish line, the cars are side by side. They go into turn number 1, and Lake Speed has Joe Ruttman. Lake Speed moves into second place.
That was a pass. There was a lot of room for Darlington. They only missed by about 3 or 4 inches.
Well, this is some kind of racetrack. It was started back in 1949. The ground was broken in December of 1949 on this track. It was finished in 1950. And look at Lake Speed move into the lead, going to the inside of Cale Yarborough in the 3rd and 4th turns. And we have a new leader of this race, Lake Speed from Jackson, Mississippi.
Bob, I'll tell you something else about those passes. I didn't see any smoke. Didn't see the car skidding. I didn't see Lake fighting the wheel. Those were 2 very smooth passes. I did not have the feeling that he was extending himself. I think that race car is working that well, and that Lake Speed is feeling comfortable. I really thought that he might, take a couple of laps and scope out the situation.
The yellow flag is going to come out because of rain if Lake can hold on to the lead to the start-finish line. And Yarborough challenges. I don't know whether he made it or not. It was close. They were racing to the caution, and I believe Lake held on.
Yeah, we're just past the start-finish line, and it looked like, Cale is dropping back already. He doesn't even have to be told. He probably waved at Lake and said, "You got me this time, buddy, but you better be a little quicker the next time because I'm going to be."
There's our leader, Lake Speed, in the Bullfrog Nets Chevrolet. He started in 6th position, qualifying at 153.474. Let's go down to Hoss Ellington, who is with Dick Bergeron.
I'm with Lake Speed's crew chief. You must be very, very happy right now.
Yeah, we are. You know, we was a lap down. We got it back, and right now we're in the lead. So it look like we're going to be pretty tough right now. And, Bullfrog Net Chevrolet's running real good. I'm proud of Lake and all the boys and the whole crew.
How do you handle this rain situation, Haas?
Well, I don't know. Well, we hadn't run far enough yet for it to be halfway. If it's halfway, it wouldn't matter. I'd like to be in the front if it does come down.
Some fun racing with Cale Yarborough. Can you continue to go by him like that?
Well, I think so. We started, on that restart there about 5th and went right on to the front. So everything's looking pretty good right now. We'll just keep it that way.
Big race to the yellow flag, and you guys beat him.
Thank you.
That's Hoss Ellington, Lake Speed's crew chief. This is a very happy pit area right now for sure.
Well, it ought to be because Lake is doing a fine job out there. Now, here is Harry Gant in the Skull Bandit Chevrolet. He was in for a pit stop and is going to be going back out onto the racetrack. But there is the number 1 of Lake Speed holding down number 1 position at this point. We are cautioned because of a few raindrops over Darlington International Raceway with 108 laps completed, and we'll be right back. As the fans are not really being bothered by the rain too much. They're from Toledo, Ohio, Larry Newber's old home.
Well, actually, Maumee, but Toledo's close enough.
Larry and I invite you to join us for Speed Week, a brand new show, our second one last Thursday night. It's a show in which we talk about everything going on in motorsports. We review the activity from the past weekend and preview some of the activity coming up for you. Join us for the 30-minute Speed Week program Thursday nights at 7:30 on ESPN.
Bob, earlier this week I was down in the Florida area and I found a story over in Tampa that is just going to amaze people who know anything at all about sprint car racing. I think we're going to look to probably having that in our show a week from this coming Thursday. We'll be on every Thursday night, but I'll tell you, sprint car racing has a lot of legends, but you ain't seen nothing yet. The story that I found in Tampa was absolutely incredible. A week from Thursday, we'll tell you all about it.
All right, that's Speed Week, 7:30 on Thursday evenings. Well, we've been talking on the radio with Benny Parsons, and despite the fact that he has had his troubles in the early stage of this race, he manages to maintain a sense of humor. And so does Dick Brooks here in car number 90. He had trouble early in the race. You can see the body damage on that car. And we wondered what it would be like for Dick Brooks' race car to be taken through a highway inspection with a state trooper. And this is the way that it came out.
Mr. Brooks, we're ready for a technical inspection of your vehicle to see if it's roadworthy. You ready?
All right, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right, sir. First thing we need to check is your headlights.
All right, sir.
Okay, I got him on.
Come on, Brian. Do you have turn signals?
Yes, sir. I have a turn signal right here. This is for turning left, and this is for turning right. Come on, this is a turn signal.
We need to check your tires. Is this all the tires that you have?
Man, that's excellent Goodyear tires there.
These tires have no tread on them.
Well, it's been going fast. Slung it all off.
Do you have an emergency brake?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if it'll help, I have a cap and some sunglasses.
Oh.
Huh?
No.
I got an emergency brake.
No. But at least show me your horn.
Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep. Whoop, whoop. Beep, beep. Okay. Right here. You fix it. You take the horn.
Obviously, Mr. Brooks, your car is not roadworthy.
Well, let me have my horn back here. The steering wheel, man.
And our thanks to South Carolina State Trooper First Class A.G. Best and Dick Brooks for helping us with that little examination of a race car and how it's not really roadworthy.
The rain is coming down harder. I hope we've started a new term. I love Brooks' response. There's no tread in this tires. I've been going fast and slung it all off. We're going red, by the way.
And we are red at Darlington as the field is being stopped. Welcome back to Darlington, South Carolina. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Newber and Dick Berggren. Our coverage of the TranSouth 500 was interrupted by a rain shower that dampened the track considerably. However, the sun came out after the shower and the track has dried very quickly. And so the cars are back out on the racetrack and we are headed for green once again in just a couple of laps. We have completed 112 laps of 367. And the leader is Lake Speed, followed by Cale Yarborough, Joe Ruttman, Bill Elliott, and Morgan Shepherd. Buddy Baker is 6th, Darrell Waltrip 7th, Ron Bouchard, Tommy Ellis, and Richard Petty make up the top 10. 13 cars are on the lead lap.
Well, there are a lot of interesting stories as we look at all of the leaders coming in the pit. Now, we're going to stay yellow for at least 5 laps, maybe as many as 10, to make sure that the track is perfectly dry here. The cars have been not impounded, but they have been isolated in the front stretch. The crews have not been able to work on them. So all the drivers are coming in, top off the fuel a little bit, check the tire.
Oh, we got
stop sign at the end of pit row. And Ron Bouchard almost was not able to stop. All the leaders surprised at that stop sign popping up at the last second. Lake Speed was the first one out of the pit.
Yeah, but he's not going to be the first one on the track, I don't think.
Well, what happened was that the cars on the tail end of the line did not pit, and they were still going by as the leaders were exiting the pits. Wow, that was a close call. We almost lost Ron Bouchard and Cale Yarborough at about 20 miles an hour. Started to say there are a lot of interesting stories. Bouchard is one of them. There's Tim Richmond going by. Remember, Richmond hit the wall so hard coming out of the 4th turn? Well, they've been able to work on this car during the long red. And now Richmond is coming back out. Obviously, he has chances for victory. Picking up back to the Ron Bouchard story. He was involved in that crash in the first lap. He's made about 6 pit stops today, and he's back on the lead lap. As a matter of fact, we've got 13 cars, Dick Berggren, on the lead lap.
And are you dry down there, Dick?
Yeah, everything is nice and dry down here. In fact, it's very sunny. And I'll tell you what else. When Lake Speed managed to get back on that racetrack before anybody else who took a pit stop, the crew just jumped up and down and let out a war whoop. These guys are pumped up. They really think they can win it. They told us during the break they didn't want to change anything in the car. They haven't changed anything in the car all day. They're fired up. They think this is going to be their show.
Well, it could be. That will remain to be seen, though, as we focus in on Benny Parsons, the pole sitter of this race, who has not been competitive here because of various mechanical problems and the fact that Benny got kind of sideways coming out of the 2nd turn on the very first lap of the race. We'll try to contact him by radio and find out what's going on with him. Benny, this is Bob up in the broadcast booth. Does the rain mean anything to you? Has it helped you or hurt you in any way?
Well, it hasn't hurt or helped me because I'm 50 laps down, but it's probably changed the racetrack a little bit, and some of the fellows that felt like they really had it dialed in may have to go back to work.
is there any way to tell at this point how it changed? Is it going to make the car looser and hard to control in the groove?
Exactly what he should do. He should make the car slip and slide as they did in the first lap of the race.
All right, Benny, we again hope that you continue to compete out there, and we'll be talking to you later. And we also have radio communication with Jeff Bodine, who is still out there on the racetrack, although he has had his problems. Jeff in the number 5 All-Star Racing, Northwestern Security Life Insurance Chevrolet. He passes beneath us, and Larry will try to raise him on the radio.
Jeff, this is Larry up in the tower. Do you read us?
Yeah, I got you, Larry.
Jeff, you've been out there for quite some time now at racing speed. Any way of telling who looks like the hot setup today, or is it still much too early to tell?
I haven't been out here that much, and I haven't been near anybody up front, but I'll tell you, by the way, it looks leg speed has really got the fastest car right now. Of course, Waltrip, and you can't count out Labonte and all the rest of the guys.
Jeff, at the beginning of the race, a lot of people were slipping and sliding. We speculated that maybe it was the rain earlier today. Do you think everybody's going to be just a little more cautious now that we've had another rain shower to dry, or rather to clean off this racetrack?
Well, Larry, I haven't seen any much caution out here today yet. These guys are driving real aggressive, and I'm sure as soon as this race starts, you're going to see a bunch of very aggressive race car drivers out here.
Is it dry all the way around, or are there any spots like up near the wall that are still just a little damp?
No, the track looks really in excellent shape. It's a little wet down on the apron, but hopefully we won't be running down there much.
Well, you keep her going straight. Remember to turn left twice every lap, okay?
Yeah, 10-4. We're going to try, Larry.
The race was stopped for 28 minutes and 51 seconds, and we are still under caution. No high speed yet, but we assume that we will be going green next time around as the light on top of the pace car is out.
Morgan Shepherd remains on the lead lap. Morgan is running in the top 5. He's been staying on the lead lap without the help of caution flags all day long. Tommy Ellis, Richard Petty, who lost a lot of time in the pits early on, is on the lead lap. And racing around the track right now, he's between turns 3 and 4, is Dave Marcus. Remember, he was involved in a spectacular spin through turns 3 and 4. He's been in the pits by our best count maybe 8 or 9 times, and he is still on the lead lap, but looks like he's going to lose it now. There is Morgan Shepherd on the outside there in the white red numeral number 23. He has not been a regular. He's not had a ride. He's only won 1 race in his career, but this is one of the few times he has participated in a race this year. He's doing well.
By the way, that win of Morgan Shepherd was an ESPN telecast back in 1981 at Martinsville. There is the work being done on the Dave Marcus car as the field is now in turn number 3. And we are going green this time around, and I think we're going to see here whether or not Lake Speed car has the horsepower to outduel everybody else, because I would imagine that everybody is going to try to catch Lake and to find out exactly what he has here on the restart. The green comes out. They go 4 abreast this time on the restart down the straightaway, and we are back to racing at Darlington.
The last time Benny Parsons was in this position was the start of the race, coming out of turn number 2, right about there. He lost it. Smooth as silk this time, Bob.
Benny Parsons followed by Richard Petty down the backstretch. Richard Petty now being shown in the lead because he got out ahead of Lake Speed when the pit stops were made. So Richard Petty, the second car in the line, is the leader. Lake Speed running in second spot. Third is Dale Earnhardt. Fourth is the number 11 car driven by Darrell Waltrip, and fifth is Terry Labonte. Benny Parsons leading the line of cars down the backstretch, but remember, Benny is several laps down.
Lots of cars out there that, like snakes, have shedded most of their skin. It's been that kind of day in Darlington, South Carolina. People that we hadn't even noticed. I noticed during the red flag. Guys like Rusty Wallace, for instance, lots of damage on the race car. Incidents that we haven't even seen. It's happening all the way around the racetrack almost every lap.
Richard Petty right behind Benny Parsons. Benny is 59 laps down. Bobby Allison, who is also running up front right now, is 34 laps down. There is Cale Yarborough in car number 28, who is trying to work his way back up toward the front.
I think that Cale's running about 7th right now. That's Morgan Shepherd right on his back bumper. It's going to take quite a number of laps to sort out the leading cars, those on the lead lap from those that are a lap down. And a lot of the cars, like Bobby Allison and Benny Parsons, who are not in it for the lead or for victory, are running right up with the leader. So this may take a while.
And there is Morgan Shepherd running right with Cale Yarborough. Meanwhile, up front, a change of position in turn number 4 as the lead goes back to Lake Speed. There they are coming out of turn number 4. Lake has passed Richard Petty, but Petty moves to the inside on the main straightaway and attempts to take the lead back. He does so. So Richard Petty, despite the fact that that car has severe body damage, is back into the lead with Lake Speed right behind him in second position. There is Bobby Allison also running with Lake Speed and Richard Petty, but Allison is 34 laps to the rears. And Lake Speed dives under Richard Petty going into turn number 3 and retakes the lead. Great racing here between Lake Speed and Richard Petty. Here is Dick Berggren.
During the break, Richard Petty said that his car seemed to be just fine despite this extensive body damage to it. He says the car is driving well. The key for him from here on in is going to be very, very cautious.
You haven't seen body damage until you've looked at Bobby Allison's car. That thing is minus the front end. All that's sitting there is the engine.
Well, Bobby began his career back in the early 60s in the Miami area, racing at places like the Hialeah Speedway, the Palmetto Speedway, on third-mile flat paved racetracks in a modified, racing against people like Rags Carter, Rod Perry, Gene Wynn, a whole bunch of names that have long since retired. Bobby's still racing, and this looks like one of those modifieds that Bobby started out in about 25 years ago.
123 laps have been completed. Lake Speed is the leader with Richard Petty running in second spot. Dale Earnhardt runs third. Darrell Waltrip fourth, and Terry Labonte now in fifth spot with 13 cars on the lead lap. A lap down is Rusty Wallace and Harry Gant. 2 laps down, Bill Elliott. Make that Bobby Hillen. The number 48 car driven by Trevor Boys, and the number 6 car driven by D.K. Ulrich.
Remember that we're on a streak now, the second such streak, covering the past 2 seasons of consecutive races with different winners. In the last 10 races, there have been 10 different winners. Obviously, Lake Speed, because he has never won a Grand National Stock Car race, is one of those who could keep that streak alive. Richard Petty could not. Richard has won during the last 10 races.
Lake Speed's best career finish twice. That is a third position on 2 different occasions. His best finish this year was a third at Rockingham, and he also had a 9th place finish in the Atlanta Coca-Cola 500, which was won by Benny Parsons. There is the battle for 3rd and 4th position involving Dale Earnhardt in the number 3 car and Darrell Waltrip in number 11. 3rd and 4th place being battled for down the main straightaway. Darrell Waltrip would like to go inside, but sees the track blocked, and so he settles back and makes no attempt to pass Dale Earnhardt. Now he might, as Earnhardt gets a little bit high in turn number 2. No, he settles back and holds a position. Meanwhile, back up front, it is still a battle for the lead as Lake Speed has jumped off into a pretty good advantage over Richard Petty.
Yeah, he really has, Bob. I tell you, Lake Speed and Haas Ellington and company are really running today. He has passed Cale Yarborough twice at speed. He has gone to battle here with Richard Petty, and it's obvious that he got the best of the duel. Not only has he passed Petty twice, remember Richard got him back once going into the first corner, but he is showing his heels. Right now, Richard Petty is seeing nothing except taillights, if they were there, and exhaust pipes, if they were there. They come out the side of a Grand National car. But Lake Speed is really going. And as I commented earlier, it does not look like he's extending himself with the car. He's running pretty straight line all the way around the speedway. That's tough to do at this place.
He's caught up with Benny Parsons, who has been leading everybody else since the drop of the green flag. But remember, he's several laps down. Now Lake on the backstretch right behind Benny Parsons as Richard Petty begins his effort to catch up now. But Lake has opened up, I would say, about a 2 or even 3 second lead over Richard Petty in car number 43, the STP Pontiac.
Try to avoid the
trouble that occurs at Darlington, the crashes and spins that seem so invariable here?
Well, I guess I've been pretty fortunate in most all those stuff, and it's just a deal of looking that much further ahead on this track than you do on some of the rest of them. And you still get in trouble. It's a one-groove racetrack. If anything happens, then it's going to happen in the groove, and there's not a lot of manipulating around that you can do to miss what happens. So you just have to be really, really cautious. And really, I think you wind up, if you're not careful, your best bet is to race the racetrack and forget about the cars that you're under.
Richard Petty from Randleman, North Carolina, the second place driver right now.
Harry Gant, who was running up front early on, we've seen a lot of strength from Harry the last couple of weeks, runs one lap down. Every once in a while he pops up on the screen. He's running in 13th position. There's Harry running right in front of Richard. He's one lap down, so if Harry could get up and get around Lake Speed, he could then get back on the same lap. But Lake Speed has really turned up the wick, and he runs about 12 car lengths ahead of Gant. But right now, I must admit, it does appear as though that Lake Speed and Harry Gant are the two fastest cars on this racetrack. Cale Yarborough, who was very fast earlier on. There's Harry, some smoke coming from underneath the number 33 as he came out of turn 2. I think he was just on it. I think he was racing hard, and the car was breaking loose a little bit, and the smoke was the tires burning as he came off of turn number 2.
I noticed that happening a couple of laps ago, but I agree with you, Harry. I think the tires are just smoking on Harry a little bit, and it doesn't indicate a mechanical problem of any kind. So Harry Gant trying to make up the lap, trying to get into a more competitive position. He is running right ahead of Richard Petty now out of turn number 2 and down the backstretch.
Harry was involved in a pretty spectacular crash at Bristol a couple races ago that required extensive body work, actually removal, for him to get back out on the racetrack. And last week at North Wilkesboro, Bob, not only the most calculated race, but I think he conducted the most calculated week that we had seen from anybody in a long time. They were almost a second, maybe a half a second off of the pole speed in qualifying, but Harry said to Travis Carter and the crew, you know, I'm so comfortable with that speed that we're turning that I really feel as though we ought to stay there and not try and go faster. So he took a slower time in qualifying in order to do well in the race, and it really paid off as he came home in a runner-up position. There you see Harry running real strong, real well here at Darlington. One lap down, 13th position. The white car there to the left of the screen, that's the leader of the race. There is Ron Bouchard, and in the number 15 car, Ricky Rudd. Now, Rudd started up near the front. He was our third fastest qualifier and seemed to be well off his qualifying pace early on in the race, and he's backed up considerably. However, Rudd has been able to stay in he was able to stay in the top 20 until he had a long pit stop and then did drop off. Bobby Hillen
got up against the wall in turn number 3 and now heads for the pit area. Bobby Hillen, a 19-year-old driver, formerly from Midland, Texas, now in Charlotte, North Carolina is where he makes his home, and this is the 6th caution of the afternoon.
There was also lots of debris on the racetrack. We'll be watching the leaders to make sure nobody picked up anything in his tire. When Hillen dropped down to the inside of the racetrack, you could see debris tumbling down the racetrack.
Here's a replay of what happened up there. Good job, Bobby, of keeping it off of the wall and hitting it real hard. He did bump it with the right quarter panel of the rear of the car, but saved it pretty well.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is to overcorrect, and he didn't do that. He was too far out of shape to save it completely, but he really held on.
So Bobby Hillen stops in the pit area and fills up the tank with fuel as we watch Lake Speed, who is the leader of the TranSouth 500 from Darlington, South Carolina. We'll be right back. We are back at Darlington, where the leaders have made another pit stop. Bobby Hillen brought out the caution a lap or two ago, and everybody came in for some service. Now they're beginning to pull out. Here is some activity on the backstretch. There are also pits on the backstretch. Connie Saylor in the lane racing Pontiac car number 37 is in for what appears to be an unroutine pit stop.
Well, Connie was one of the surprise entrants and qualifiers. Actually, only about 3 people who were here we thought had a shot to get into the race. Doug Hebron, H.B. Bailey, and J.D. McDuffie were among some of the people who were here, expected to get into the race and did not get in. Saylor's been out there all day long, and now looks like he has a problem. There's Tim Richmond. We all are well aware of his problem that he had earlier.
Tim hitting the wall in turn number 4, coming to rest to the inside of the racetrack near the start-finish line, but he's back out there. And there is Jeff Bodine also in for a pit stop, and the crew is doing work on the left side of that car, changing the rubber. Let's go down to the pit area. Here is Dick Bergeron once again.
And I'm here with a fella everybody has to look up to just because he's so big and tall. I'm with Joe Klecko, the football star, and he's in Harry Gant's pit. He's been cheering him on all day. Joe, what brings you to the races today?
Oh, I can come down and watch the Skoll team do real well today, I hope.
You come very often, Joe?
Well, I get to about 5 races a year, and I get to watch them on TV as much as
We've got a spin on the backstretch. Trouble on the backstretch.
Well, there are 4 cars back there. I believe Kyle Petty was the one who spun, and he was met by the number 21 car of Buddy Baker.
Bob, also Ruttman and Labonte were involved in that. Absolutely astounding. 2 of our front runners all day long. Ruttman and Labonte, in addition to Wallace and Buddy Baker. Baker, of course, has also been in the top 10. It's just amazing what happens at Darlington. It's almost like the place is spooked sometimes.
Kyle Petty not involved. Baker was. Here is the number 88 of Rusty Wallace with severe damage to the front end of the race car.
Boy, you got to wonder, how can something like that happen under the yellow flag? Now, most of the leaders had already pitted. I believe that Labonte and Ruttman were among those who had pitted. I don't think they were racing to get back in line. They had to be under a routine yellow flag situation. And all of a sudden, there's Buddy Baker sideways and 3 or 4 guys jamming up behind him.
And the crew is working feverishly on the right side of Joe Ruttman's car. Now, Terry Labonte, who was also involved in the accident, I don't think he sustained very much body damage. He's back out there. Here comes Buddy Baker in the number 21 Valvoline Ford. He was the one that spun out there just about midway down the backstretch and was hit by the 3 other cars.
You can see extensive bodywork damage to the Joe Ruttman car. I don't know if they're going to be able to get around and get that car out before the field comes around. He is right now vulnerable in terms of going down a lap.
All right, let's talk to Jeff Bodine and see if he knows what happened back there. Jeff, this is Bob up in the broadcast booth. Do you know what happened back there on the backstretch?
Well, Bob, it's like I said, these guys are a little aggressive, and I didn't see what took place. I didn't see who caused that wreck, but when you wreck out the yellow coming out of the pits, that's being real aggressive.
Jeff, the racetrack, was there a lot of change in the racetrack after this rain?
I couldn't tell any change, Bob. It felt pretty good. It might have helped. It cooled it off a little bit, but the track's in real good shape right now.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, Ruttman did lose the lap. Baker and Labonte have still been able to save their lap, but the damage to the Ruttman car does look to be fairly severe, at least as far as the cosmetics go.
We are under our 6th caution period of the day. We're 139 laps into the race, not halfway yet. And the leader continues to be Dale Earnhardt after this caution period. We'll be right back with more. The green flag comes out. No, the yellow stays out. For some reason, everybody had anticipated a green, but Harold Kinder waves the yellow and no restart.
A guess. Tommy Ellis may have jumped. That's just a guess. We'll see. He had quite a burst of speed as he came down the front stretch.
Now to Dick Bergeron, who may be able to shed some light on what happened in that incident on the backstretch. Dick?
Well, I've been unable to talk to Joe Ruttman just because there's so much noise going on here with power chisels that it's impossible for one person standing next to another to hear each other. But what is happening to Joe Ruttman's car, and he was in contention for the lead, is that he has now got serious mechanical trouble. Among other problems he has experienced, the oil cooler appears to be leaking. For sure, the power steering cooler is leaking. Now, both of those coolers are up at the front of the car. He cannot run with those leaks. They are going to have to fix them. In addition, they're going to have to do lots and lots of sheet metal damage. I think we're going to see another one of Larry Nuber's super modified type cars here before this thing goes out of pit road.
Well, tough break for Joe Ruttman, who was running in the top 5 when the incident occurred. Joe is 39 years of age and is still looking for his first Grand National victory. His best career finish was 2nd at Riverside back in 1981.
Well, right now, I have a feeling that there's some consultation going on as we look at Buddy Baker, a very discouraged Buddy Baker, obviously, looking at his steed as it sits quietly in the garage area. Consultation going on the racetrack with Tommy Ellis. He's side by side with the pace car right now. Ellis thinks he can go all the way around and get back on the tail of the tandem because he feels as though he led when the green flag dropped. But again, we're still speculating as to what went on that restart. It may have been that Ellis jumped, but we'll see what happened.
Another one of the drivers into the pits was Rusty Wallace. He is pitted on the backstretch and work being done on that car. He was involved in this incident on the backstretch with Buddy Baker and Terry Labonte and Joe Ruttman. He gets back out there. Apparently there is some debris on the front straightaway, and that may be the reason why they did not get a green flag on that lap ago.
Benny, this is Larry and Bob up in the broadcast booth. Do you read us? Benny, in a situation like what we just had on this racetrack, an anticipated green flag and then the yellow, that's a pretty dangerous moment, isn't it?
It really is. It's terrifying.
Everybody seemed to handle it pretty well this time, though.
Well, the green flag was actually, I don't think, ever thrown. All I ever saw was a yellow flag. If the green had been momentarily flashed and then the yellow, we'd had a big-time problem.
Okay, Benny, you stay out there. We'll keep our eyes peeled for you, okay?
Here's Dick Berggren with Joe Ruttman.
Well, the air chisels are quiet down here now. Joe, what did happen on the backstretch?
Well, it was kind of a fluke. We was just jamming up for getting ready for a restart, and I looked up, and Buddy Baker, the 21 car, was sideways, and, you know, for no apparent reason, someone must have tagged him and got him sideways, and everybody jammed on their brakes, obviously, and I just wasn't quick enough, and I run into the back of somebody and did a lot of damage to the front of the car.
Super speedway parking lot type jam.
Well, it wasn't going fast, though. That was the amazing thing. It was going real slow, so I'm going to have to be more careful going slow, I guess.
That's Joe Ruttman. He's sitting in the pit. They're working on the front end of his car to try to get him back on the racetrack.
It's amazing how Joe Ruttman can have a smile on his face after what happened.
Bob, last week you mentioned it. Jeff Bodine and Joe Ruttman, those two guys have run up front so many times, and we keep saying it's only a matter of time, not a matter of if these guys win a race. And it looks like it's not going to be today for either Bodine or Ruttman again.
The green flag is not quite ready to go, so remind you of another race that you can see on ESPN May the 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time. The World Endurance Series from Monza, Italy, a 1,000-mile or kilometer event. See it Sunday, May 6th on ESPN, just a part of our Auto Racing 84 series.
Now, there'll be more races than ever before on any other network in the history of broadcasting on ESPN this summer. So if you're a race fan, boy, you're at the right place. All you got to do is put that dial on, just leave her there until November. And then even after that, maybe even longer.
We're covering the TranSouth 500 from Darlington, South Carolina, live for you today. And the pace car stays out there. The past winners of this particular race, Harry Gant won it last year. Dale Earnhardt was the winner here in 1982. Darrell Waltrip won in 81, and David Pearson was in victory lane in 1980 for the TranSouth 500. Two races are held here every year, the TranSouth 500 in the spring and the Southern 500 in the fall. We were talking with a football star when the incident on the backstretch occurred. Let's go down to Dick to resume that conversation with the New York Jet star. Dick?
Well, Joe Klecko, you're in a contact sport. It certainly appears as if we have one here today, too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but these guys here is a lot different. They put them cars in the wall. It hurts a lot more.
Would you ever be interested in trying this sort of thing, Joe?
No, I don't think so. I like hitting people. Hitting people seems to be a lot easier than these race cars.
And you're a good friend of Harry Gant's, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I'm here rooting Harry on. I hope he wins it.
There's Joe Klecko in Harry Gant's pit, cheering away.
All right, the pace car is pulling ahead of the field, and we expect to go back green here with 145 laps completed. Still a long way to the finish. The leader of the race is Dale Earnhardt in car number 3, with second place belonging to Morgan Shepherd. Then third is Richard Petty. Fourth is Darrell Waltrip. And fifth place is Lake Speed. Those are the cars to the outside of the racetrack. The slower cars, the lap cars, are to the inside as the green finally waves and we are back underway. Dale Earnhardt out in into the lead, followed very closely by Tommy Ellis. But remember, Tommy is trying to make up the lap. Tommy is in the red number 4. We'll see if he can pass Dale and make up the lap. At the end of the backstretch, he cannot. Ellis looking to the high side now of Earnhardt in turn number 3 and 4. But again, he's unable to pass. The stripe once again. Earnhardt holding the lead. Richard Petty now in second position as Morgan Shepherd begins to drop back.
Looking at Earnhardt and Ellis up front, I tell you, this could be interesting. The past 2 seasons, I think if you looked up the word aggression in the dictionary, under the category of NASCAR, you'd seen a picture of Dale Earnhardt, and under the category of NASCAR late model sportsman, you would have seen a picture of Tommy Ellis. Probably the 2 most aggressive drivers in their respective divisions over the past 2 seasons. Earnhardt in Grand National and Ellis in late model sportsman. Ellis trying to get the lap back, and Earnhardt trying to plant his hold on the lead just a little deeper.
Richard Petty moves up to second position. Darrell Waltrip now is in third, and Lake Speed in fourth. Morgan Shepherd is dropping back to fifth position at this point. Now Darrell Waltrip begins to work on Richard Petty going into the third turn. Darrell Waltrip getting the left side of that car off of the groove onto the apron of the track, but holding on the control. Here they come off of the fourth turn. Petty, Waltrip, Lake Speed, and Morgan Shepherd. Nose to tail on the racetrack. Meanwhile, still out front is Dale Earnhardt, who is moving away from Richard Petty.
Yeah, and he's also shaken loose from Tommy Ellis, too. There you see Earnhardt, the first car in line, streaming down the back chute. Ellis is now about 8 or 10 car lengths behind. So Earnhardt, at least at this point, is the only one that's riding comfortably.
Darrell Waltrip, second in the point standings last year, losing the championship to Bobby Allison. Now running in third place here in the TranSouth 500. Richard Petty looking for the opportunity to pass Tommy Ellis in turn number 2. See how Petty handles the situation coming off of the second turn and down the backstretch. Richard moves to the inside of Tommy Ellis, but Ellis has the horsepower and is able to stay ahead of Richard.
Ellis right now is holding back a bevy of race cars. We've already saw Richard Petty, of course, right behind him, and then there's Waltrip that's also backed up. You see Cale Yarborough in this. Look at Waltrip making it 3 abreast coming down the front stretch. Is there enough room?
3 wide. Waltrip inside. Yes, he does pick up the position. Petty moves back to third position now, and Lake Speed going to the inside of Tommy Ellis and also passing. So Waltrip with a bold move on the main straightaway, going 3 abreast, narrowing down into turn number 1 and passing both Richard Petty and Tommy Ellis to move into second position.
Ellis had hoped to get his lap back, but now the leaders have streamed by him. He has slipped way back to about the 10th or 11th car in line. So there goes Tommy Ellis's chances this time to get the lap back. And now we'll see if Waltrip, Petty, and Speed in that order. There's Morgan Shepherd. There's Morgan Shepherd in 5th position. He was one of those other cars who also got around Ellis. Morgan is not only in 5th position on the track, but also 5th position in the race. A great day for Morgan Shepherd.
Morgan Shepherd finished 26th a year ago in this race. Now running in 5th position, his 3rd race in the 1984 Grand National campaign. The winner of the Martinsville race in 1981 that we covered for you on ESPN. His best finish this year has been a 13th in the Richmond Fairgrounds 400.
This is the Bear racing equipment that Morgan Shepherd is racing in today. Morgan, of course, from Conover, North Carolina. The number 23 car is the car that brought Jeff Bodine to Grand National Racing a couple of years ago.
Shepherd now beginning to work on Richard Petty down the main straightaway. That is Lake Speed working on Richard Petty. I beg your pardon. Lake picks up the position. Lake Speed goes into 3rd place, passing Richard Petty. So Lake Speed continuing to look very strong here, moving from 5th to 3rd in just 2 laps. Let's go back down to Dick Bergeron.
And I'm with Jeff Hammond, Darrell Waltrip's crew chief. It looks like you guys are flexing some muscle, Jeff.
No, really, we're just doing the same pace we had earlier in the race. I think right now that Dale slowed down just a little bit. It's making it seem that way. We've just been kind of pacing ourselves since the start of the race. He's still maintaining about the same pace we started with, so that's what we're going to try to run the rest of the race.
And that's the story from Darrell Waltrip's pit.
Darrell Waltrip now has closed right in on the back bumper of Dale Earnhardt. They go down the back chute. Darrell Waltrip thinking about going to the inside, but thinking better of it. As again, you don't want to go too abreast through turn number 3, at least going into turn number 3. Now Waltrip will be looking for the opportunity here on the main straightaway. They come off of the 4th turn. Waltrip moving to the inside, cannot find the room. Still running in 2nd position behind Dale Earnhardt.
Darrell Waltrip, the champion in 81, the champion in 82. He has not won on a super speedway, a track of 1 mile or longer, since October of 1982. Remember, none of Waltrip's wins in 1983 last year came on a super speedway. He won at North Wilkesboro, at Martinsville, he won at Nashville, he won at Bristol, but none of the events were at a track longer than 1 mile. It has been since October of 82 since this team has tasted victory on a super speedway. Waltrip would really like to get a change on that record.
Darrell Waltrip has won 58 times on the Grand National Circuit, and there is the leader, Dale Earnhardt, in the number 3 Wrangler Jean Chevrolet. Dale started this race in 14th starting position, qualifying at 152.205. The 1979 Rookie of the Year and the 1980 Winston Cup champion. Dick Berggren, we've been watching Dale Earnhardt looking very strong here in the last few laps.
And he has a very special car in which to run that strong, too. The car was built for and runs only 3 racetracks, here, Michigan, and Pocono. Those are not very high-speed tracks, nor are they slow racetracks. They are medium-speed tracks. And that indicates the degree of specialization to which this Dale Earnhardt crew has gone. Now, they build their own cars, they build their own motors, and right now they're showing that they do it very well.
Straightaway, Cale Yarborough is beginning to move toward the front. Cale Yarborough in that number 28 has led this race, and he has now moved himself into 5th position behind Richard Petty in number 43. There's the interval between 4th and 5th place. And I'll tell you, you never want to count Cale Yarborough out of a race on this kind of a track. I remember last year, on several occasions, Cale just kind of hangs back in the middle of the pack, or at least up toward the front, but never in a real challenging position until about the 3/4 mark. And then Cale asserts himself and very often winds up in victory lane.
Richard Petty, the king. He's being courted now by the road knights of the round table, if you will, the other competitors. There's a good reason why Richard Petty is called the king. Can you believe winning 27 races in a single season? It seems absolutely impossible now. The season is only 30 races long, but back in 1967, when they ran 48 races, Richard Petty won 27 times. In 71, he won 21 times. That's how I got the nickname, the King.
Darrell Waltrip is the new leader at Darlington as he has passed Dale Earnhardt, moved into 1st place. Now Lake Speed is also closing in on Earnhardt in 2nd position. But here is the leader of the race, Darrell Waltrip, in the number 11 Budweiser Chevrolet. Off of turn number 4, there is Lake Speed right behind Dale Earnhardt across the start-finish line. Lake Speed will make no attempt to move into 2nd spot going into turn number 1, at least on this lap. Now Earnhardt just slightly high in turn number 2, and Lake Speed looking for the opportunity to pass. They go down the backstretch. Cale Yarborough has moved into 4th place now as Cale has passed Richard Petty. So things are beginning to tighten up here. There's Cale now in 4th place in the Hardee's Chevrolet.
It took a while, but the cream is beginning to rise to the top here, so to speak. By the way, we're not halfway yet. We'll tune you in on that when that occurs, but about 20 laps away from that. Harry Gant, you also got a quick glimpse of him on the last lap. Remember that he is still 1 lap down to the leaders, and right there is 2nd place Earnhardt, and 3rd place Lake Speed, and Lake Speed's trying to change that right now.
Muscle being shown on the back chute. Lake to the inside, passing Dale Earnhardt. Lake Speed back into 2nd place.
The guy who's been passed is the one who really has to be careful going into turn 3 and turn 1. We told you earlier in the broadcast, you slow down significantly going into the corners here at Darlington. And when you pass somebody, that means you're braking sooner than he is, and it really does snap it off quickly. And if you've just been passed going down either one of the straightaways, you've got to be very careful. You have to yield to the guy who's in front of you. It's your responsibility to anticipate his braking maneuver and to get off the gas just a little sooner than what you would if you were on the track by yourself.
Speed is pulled away from Dale Earnhardt. You can see the interval there. There's Earnhardt in third place, and now Lake Speed sets his sights on the leader, Darrell Waltrip. 165 laps have been completed, and we will be back with more live coverage of the TranSouth 500. We are back at Darlington, and Tim Richmond has spun once again on the backstretch and hit the inside wall. There was a fire that broke out under the car, but as Tim went along and before he climbed out, the fire extinguished himself. Tim decides to climb out anyway, and the caution is out once again, and pit stops are being made. Tim Richmond, for the second time today, trouble. And here is a replay of what happened. This is coming off of turn number 2.
You can see him fighting the car, trying to make it go straight. Watch the right-hand side of your screen. Just slipping through Phil Parsons. He had just enough room. A little reminiscent of that crash at Daytona involving Jim Hurlburt. But Phil Parsons gets through, unlike Hurlburt. And as Richmond starts to pull away, what he has probably done is broken an oil line, and hot oil is spilling out on hot pipes or metal somewhere, and it ignites underneath the car. Now, he went a ways before he stopped. I think he may not have had any brakes, Bob. He couldn't get the car stopped, but fortunately, the blaze did go out and Tim bailed out, and apparently without injury.
The scurry to get out of the pit area is underway. Tim Richmond is okay. His car is resting on the low side of the racetrack in turn number 3. Our 7th caution of the afternoon on lap number 166. The leaders have been in for pit stops as the fans continue to watch the Tim Richmond car. Here is Joe Ruttman's car, and it looks almost as bad as Bobby Allison's.
Well, I tell you, I think there's less there than on Bobby. Bobby's got a left front fender. Joe doesn't have anything.
And Jeff Bodine in car number 5 is also in to the pit area as they're looking over that car, trying to change the rubber on the right side.
Well, we're seeing a lot of cars running around this racetrack with some very significant looking damage at any rate. The reality of the situation is, however, that the crews look these cars over very, very carefully before they put them back out on the racetrack, just to make sure everything is A-OK underneath. Talked to Bobby Allison during the break we had earlier in the day, and he said his car is running just fine. He sort of wishes he had a hood on it and the front fenders and all that, but other than that, he's running just fine. Richard Petty repeated the same kind of thing. Dick Brooks, whose car looks absolutely awful right now in terms of its sheet metal, Brooks said the car is drivable. He can't really go as fast as he likes, but it's perfectly drivable. So if you're worried about the safety, certainly any time one gets over 150 miles an hour, you have to worry about that. But the cars are looked over very, very carefully by the crews before they go back out again.
So it's not necessarily the beauty of the cars, but the way they perform. We'll be back with more racing from the TranSouth 500 at Darlington International Raceway in just a moment. We are back at Darlington International Raceway in the running of the TranSouth 500. Tim Richmond is okay. He brought out the most recent caution and spun and hit the wall on the backstretch, and there was a small fire that broke out under the car, but it was quickly extinguished, and Tim is okay. We have 8 cars on the lead lap with 170 laps completed out of 367, so we've got over 200 more laps to go in this race. The leader is Darrell Waltrip in car number 11. Running in second position is Dale Earnhardt in car number 3. Third place is Lake Speed. Fourth is Cale Yarborough, and fifth is Terry Labonte. Sixth place, Richard Petty. Seventh is Bill Elliott. Eighth, Ron Bouchard. Ninth, a lap down, Morgan Shepherd. And 10th, also a lap down, is Harry Gant. In 11th position, a lap down, is Tommy Ellis. Now, Morgan had been running on the lead lap, but lost it when he pitted on the backstretch during this caution period.
There's Bobby Allison, continues to race at speed. Incidentally, we're sad to report that Benny Parsons is once again behind the pit wall, and there are a lot of favorites who have dropped out of contention among Others, Joe Ruttman, Harry Gant, Dick Brooks, Buddy Baker, Tim Richmond, Bobby Allison, Jeff Woodine, David Pearson, Dave Marcus, all looked like they had a shot at victory here, but one problem or another has sidelined them.
We've had 7 caution periods for a total of 53 laps. A lot of bumping and contact between cars and a lot of contact between cars and the wall. ESPN and STP present a pit stop.
Larry Newber, and this is another STP pit stop. You know, a lot of people don't realize that safety comes well ahead of speed on the racetrack. I am with Richard Petty, the all-time leading winner on the Grand National Stock Car Circuit. And Richard, that safety becomes, or rather starts, even before you get into the car, doesn't it?
Well, there's a lot of things. Actually, when you first approach your car, you should walk around it and, you know, make sure all the air is in the tires and make sure there's not a bicycle leaning up against it or something like that. You know, before you ever get in the car, so that you know how to back out of the driveway or whatever. You know, then once you get in the car, then you need to sit down and sort of get yourself set, get the seat set, look around and make sure that, you know, the mirrors and everything's all in the right place, that you sort of see what's going on. You know, another thing really is stuff laying around on the dash. Make sure there's not any Coke bottles up under the seats and stuff that could slide out when, you know, when you're going down the road to get under the pedals and stuff like that. You know, familiarize with your car. If you're used to driving the same car all the time, that's fine. But if you get in a friend's car or something like that, you should find out where all the gauges are, all the buttons. You know, check the brakes, make sure there's brakes on the car before you start off. You know, just different things like that to get used to that particular car. There's a lot of other things you can do, you know, as far as once you get started. But these are the things that need to be done even before you ever crank your car up.
Not only that, but all this happens even before you put the seat belts on. That gets a lot of attention, but that's pretty important too, isn't it?
Well, the seat belts are very, very important. But, you know, if you do everything else, then you're automatically going to put your seat belts on. And, you know, as far as the seat belts and stuff, I don't guess there's a whole lot more you can do once you put the seat belts on. Then it's up to the driver to be safe from that.
Thank you, Richard Petty. We will be back all summer long with more STP pit stops. In our next report, we'll talk about vehicular maintenance itself, a part of safety on the highway.
The green flag is out once again at Darlington, and Darrell Waltrip has continued to lead this race with Dale Earnhardt running second and Lake Speed in third position. Here they come up of turn number 4.
Cale Yarborough is slowing. Cale Yarborough dropped to the inside of the racetrack going into turn number 3, almost called a rhubarb, but everybody got by. Yarborough in trouble.
Yarborough was an early leader of this TranSouth 500. He is in the pits right now. We'll see what the crew does. Perhaps he cut a tire. They are bringing out rubber on the right side of the car. The jack goes under the car being lifted. The tires being changed on the right side. The windshield is also being wiped off by members of the crew.
The field comes around, and Yarborough is going to go down one lap unless a miracle. No way for a miracle. He's going to be. He does get the go signal at the end of the pit road, but the leaders have streamed by one lap. Now, we've got a ways to go in this race, so Yarborough has plenty of opportunity to get back onto the lead lap. You know how strong he is and how strong that car has been. Certainly, no race car in Grand National Stock Car Racing, particularly in the super speedways, has been faster than Waddell Wilson's over the last 5 years.
Darrell Waltrip is pulling away from the rest of the field. Lake Speed, by the way, has moved into second position, passing Dale Earnhardt. But it is Darrell Waltrip who is looking strong at this point in the TranSouth 500.
As we watch the leaders, just to keep you updated on the Yarborough story, he is back into the pits for a second time.
Oh, and trouble out in turn number 2. 4 cars involved.
Rusty Wallace is among them. Oh, D.K. Ulrich way up in the air. He drove right over somebody's front end. I think Bodine is involved in it.
Well, everybody except 2 cars are back under power.
I think Greg Sachs was also heavily damaged in that. As we mentioned, Jeff Bodine, a prominent player in that little skit over there coming out of turn number 2. It developed between turns 1 and 2. The car coming in looks like the Race Hill Farms machine. It is not. That's DK Ulrich with the paint scheme of the week. Yellow top, white sides, and a black number 6.
This is our 8th caution period of the day, and more sheet metal is going to have to be ripped off of several of the cars before they're able to get back out there.
DK got way up in the air.
He did. I thought the car was going to roll over, but fortunately it did not. Here's a replay of what happened.
Bob, I can't tell who that was that started it. There are 2 or 3 in there. Lots of smoke, of course, heavy smoke. Again, Bodine, Wallace, DK.
There is DK right there going over the front quarter panel of some car.
Connie Saylor did a good job of driving. He stayed out of the way. The red and white car there, that's Greg Sachs, the modified driver from the Northeast. And there is Jeff Bodine, his race car in repose.
Boy, it's been a tough afternoon for Jeff Bodine. He is out of the car, obviously all right, but very, very disappointed on what happened here. There is Dick Brooks' car, number 90. It is down on the inside of the racetrack, off of the track in the grass, and Dick is out surveying the additional damage to that car. He was involved in an incident earlier, and Rusty Wallace's number 88 has also had severe damage to the left side of it.
Well, Rusty was cruising around the speedway for about the last 80 or 90 laps with a lot of body damage as it was, but this time it looks terminal. The Gatorade Racing Team crew over to retrieve their vehicle.
Cale Yarborough is back out there. He had trouble with the rubber on the left rear of the car, and that brought him into the pit area. But Cale, despite the fact that he is down 1 lap, is back out there in competition.
They had a problem with the racers refer to as equalize, usually refers to the inner liner going down, and still things are not right. Apparently, when the tire went down, there's a possibility that they damaged something in the suspension of the car, and this could be terminal for Yarborough, or at least causing a long pit stop. Obviously, this yellow plays into his hand, but recall that he had lost 2 laps already under green before this yellow flew.
Yarborough slides to a stop in his pit area, and the rubber being changed now on the left side of the car. Right ahead of Cale, Terry Labonte is also pitted for some new rubber. Crew members signaling that the left rear tire is okay, and there goes Cale Yarborough once again. All right, the caution out once again at 179 laps because of this accident. The leader is Darrell Waltrip with Lake Speed in second place. The wreckage is being pulled off of the racetrack from the area of turn number 2, Dick Brooks and Jeff Bodine's race cars, and the oil dry is also being put down over there. This is the way they are running with 180 laps completed. The leader of the race is Darrell Waltrip in the number 11 Budweiser Chevrolet. Second place is Lake Speed in the Bullfrog Nitz Chevrolet. Third place is Dale Earnhardt in the Wrangler Jean Chevrolet, car number 3. Bobby Allison is the next car in line. However, he is not on the lead lap. In fourth position is Richard Petty in the number 43 STP Pontiac. That's how things stack up here with 7 cars now in the lead lap. Cale Yarborough lost 1 lap when he came in because of his tire problem.
Well, a tough break for all those guys involved in that crash over there in 1 and 2. Many of them had been survivors from a previous incident. There's the front stretch here at the historic Darlington Raceway, superimposed over probably the most historic face in the history of Grand National Stock Car Racing. A successful driver, winner 50 times, a most successful team owner. His teams have won more championships than anybody, and right now there is one of his 2 first team drivers. There is no first or second team in the Junior Johnson garages. As a matter of fact, they are 2 separate operations out in Ronda. Just a throw from Engle Holler. Darrell Waltrip, of course, has been Grand National Champion twice for Junior Johnson, and Neil Bonnet, Darrell's new teammate, hopes to emulate what Darrell Waltrip has done over the past 3 seasons.
By the way, Junior Johnson won this race in 1965, and he has had winning cars on 7 different occasions. The number 67 car of Buddy Arrington is pitted on the backstretch.
This is the affordable used car rental system special for this weekend. Buddy Arrington, one of those guys who, as he travels around the country, has a lot of friends who like to help him out. And this week's friend are the people in Matawan, New Jersey. Believe it or not, the Yankees invading the South once again to put their name on the side of Buddy Arrington's car. Also, the Buddy Arrington Racing Club is very much involved in keeping Buddy on the racetrack. It's a club that kind of unique in its nature in that a lot of the proceeds that go to the club go directly to this team. They help keep Buddy Arrington on the racetrack. We've had a lot of fun with Buddy Arrington in the years that we've been covering Grand National Stock Car Racing, and it's always a pleasure to be around that gentleman.
As we look over to the west, we see rain. Now, I think that perhaps the rain is going to miss us. Nevertheless, it has clouded up considerably here in the last few minutes.
And, Bob, we are 5 laps.
Yes.
Correction, 2 laps from halfway. Keep that in mind. 2 laps from halfway if we get a substantial rain shower. As we look at the number 17 of Clark Dwyer from Colorado Springs, Colorado, the leader, when the yellow flies next time, could end up being winner. Clark Dwyer is an interesting young man. He's as much of a businessman. He put together his own racing team as a teenager. He ran ASA racing for a couple of seasons and came Grand National Stock Car Racing this year.
Jeff Bodine was knocked out of competition over in turn number 2 a few laps ago. He's with Dick Berggren.
Jeff, what happened back there?
Well, Dick, just going in the first corner, Rusty Wallace ran in the back of me and spun me around, and from there, everybody just seemed to run into me. I don't know why he did it. I guess maybe he didn't like me going by him down the straightaway or what, but that's all happened. He just run plumb into me and spun me around.
Jeff Bodine in the garage area. His car is thoroughly damaged. And thank you very much for helping us today, Jeff. Sorry you're out.
Green once again over Darlington. Into turn number 1 they go. Bobby Allison is now right up on the back bumper of Darrell Waltrip, but Allison not on the lead lap. As a matter of fact, 34 laps to the rears. Nevertheless, Bobby has been running well since that accident that he was involved in early in the competition. There's second place, Lake Speed. Tommy Ellis also in the picture there. He is also off the lap. Halfway through the TranSouth 500, so should we get rain and rain enough to halt this race for any length of time, it would be considered an official race. And I'm sure that has to be on the minds of several of these drivers. Harry Gann is back in for a tire change.
Grand National Stock Car Racing has become very scientific and very calculated. A lot of the teams are tinkering with computers, and I guarantee you that all of the crews know how many laps have gone by, and all of them are looking over their shoulder at the sky as we look at Richard Petty. Richard Petty right now runs in 3rd position in this race. He's the 5th car in line from the leader, but Petty is 3rd, and right behind him is Dale Earnhardt. There is the blue and yellow colors of Wrangler.
3rd, 4th, and 5th place here. Richard Petty in 3rd. In 4th place, just moving into 4th place, as a matter of fact, is Bill Elliott. And back to 5th place is Dale Earnhardt. And once again, we see the persistence of Bill Elliott paying off. He's another one of those drivers like Cale Yarborough, just kind of sits back and waits until the later stages of the race and then begins to make his move. He maybe thinks that there could be a rain situation, and Bill Elliott is charging toward the front.
Bob, I'll tell you, this is a tough call as we continue to look at the Coors car of Bill Elliott. What do you do? There's a long ways to go in this race, and we've seen how easy it is to get in trouble here at Darlington. A long ways to go. The sky isn't a definite rain threat. Well, I should say it's a definite threat, but you can't for certain see the rain. And I got a feeling that Hoss Ellington has got to be wondering, do I really turn loose Blake and try and make him go for the lead or hold back a little bit? I'm betting they all are looking at this like a trophy dash right now. With 180 laps to go, we may be seeing all the cards that everybody holds. Here's Bill Elliott. He's put on a move the last couple of laps. He went around Dale Earnhardt. Now he's moving up to challenge Richard Petty. He's sat and he's smooth on the racetrack. He may be making a move. Lake Speed may be making a move. Even though there are 180 laps to go, this might look like the last 10 here.
Bill Elliott following Richard Petty into turn number 1. As up front, Darrell Waltrip continues to lead. They go off of turn number 2 and down the backstretch. Both cars have sustained some body damage, but that has not slowed them down a bit. Petty and Bill Elliott battling for 3rd position here. Elliott to the turn number 4. Can't make the pass. Down the straightaway they come. The car in front of them, driven by Tommy Ellis, a lap down. So both Petty and Bill Elliott will be attempting to pass Tommy Ellis here as they go down the backstretch. Now Richard Petty moves to the inside and passes Ellis and puts Ellis between himself and Bill Elliott. Let's go down to Dick Bergeron, who has Rusty Wallace.
Rusty, what's your version of the accident on the backstretch?
Well, I was like on the back straightaway there. It's just when I was coming down the back straightaway, it looked like Buddy Baker spun to keep from hitting somebody. The whole field locked up the brakes, and when that happened, we all got in a wreck back down there. But after the wreck took off, then when the green flag come back out, I had my toe in knocked out, and I come down the front straightaway. Jeff Bodine won the corner. I wanted to try to go underneath Jeff and just didn't make it. Just wasn't enough room. I tapped Jeff in the left rear and we all spun. And all I can say, it's Darlington's a rough racetrack. It's the first time for me here, and the car was running super good. And I guess a couple times we were up to 8th and 9th place, and we had a little problem at getting a lap down early in the race. But that's racing at Darlington. Darlington's known for a lot of crashes, and I just got myself in a couple of predicaments today that I shouldn't have got myself into.
They said it was the track too tough to tame, and apparently it is certainly taking its toll today.
Rusty Wallace, a contender for Rookie of the Year, leading in the points battle at this time, and he'll be back for another race at Darlington. Off of the 4th turn, Darrell Waltrip leads Lake Speed across the start-finish line, and the 2 cars in front of Bobby Allison's look pretty clean and unscathed, at least compared to the Allison car.
Yeah, they do, but I don't think that is necessarily the way to victory lane at Darlington. Some pretty badly damaged race cars have won here, but it is an indication of 2 things. One, that those 2 cars have been running up front all day and ahead of a lot of the action going on, and the fact that the 2 drivers have also been pretty careful.
Well, we've been noticing the last couple of laps, the fender on the left side of the Allison car is flapping in the breeze, so to speak, and it looks like it may be wanting to come off. We'll watch that situation for you.
Richard Petty has a similar situation. We noted that a few laps ago also, that not everything is battened down completely in the front end of the Petty car, but the Allison situation a little more serious right now than Richards.
There's the interval between 1st and 2nd place. Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed going into turn number 4. Now the 3rd spot is being held down at this point by Bill Elliott, and 4th is Richard Petty. Here they come down the main straightaway. There is Elliott right ahead of Richard Petty. Bill Elliott in the Coors Ford, and Richard Petty in the STP Pontiac. 3rd and 4th place.
Well, things have calmed down. I kind of anticipated some battling to go on, but I don't know that it's a matter that Lake Speed and Haas Ellington running in 2nd behind Waltrip, and Elliott running in 3rd, there Bill is, behind the 2 of them, have decided to sit back and wait. I don't believe that at all. I just think that everybody is flat out right now, and I think what we're seeing is that Waltrip is the best car on the racetrack at this second. But in Grand National stock car racing, anything can change. The tire goes away, the chassis changes, the track gets just a little more slick, and all of a sudden somebody doesn't have the setup that he had before.
Well, I think the guy that you really have to pat on the back, at least at this point, as we noticed the great drive last weekend of Kyle Petty, this weekend I'm impressed with the run of Lake Speed from Jackson, Mississippi, who has never won a Grand National race and never finished 2nd, but he is strong here today and certainly capable of winning this race.
Interested in numerology? This sort of stretches the points, so you got to listen real careful. The last 3 winners of this race have finished in the previous Daytona 500 either 36th or 37th. The last 3 winners here: Harry Gant, Darrell Waltrip, and Dale Earnhardt. Well, Lake Speed this year finished 36th at Daytona. If the numerology cycles back and orbits one more time, Lake Speed will be the winner here at Darlington.
Well, we talked to Haas Ellington earlier about his feelings on his driver. Let's talk to him again with Dick Bergeron.
Haas, how are you going to handle the weather situation here?
Well, I'm looking in the sky about every lap, and right now we're hanging right there at 2nd, so I'm going to give him the word if we feel a drop of rain in here. That's what we're going to look for right now, because, if we're over halfway mark, half the rain, we need to be in the front.
Charge if rain.
That's right. If I'm in the front, I'll take you to.
There's Here's the story from Lake Speed's pit right now.
Well, it's very cloudy here at Darlington, but no raindrops for a while. As Darrell Waltrip continues to lead Hoss Ellington's driver, Lake Speed. There are the storm clouds behind the main grandstand. We'll be back with more racing in just a moment. 203 laps out of 367 completed in the TranSouth 500 from Darlington, South Carolina. Darrell Waltrip, the leader. Lake Speed, second. Bill Elliott, third. Richard Petty, fourth. And Terry Labonte is running in fifth place. Here they are moving down the straightaway, the first three cars. There is Waltrip. There is Lake Speed. And behind Lake, going to the outside, is Bill Elliott in third position. Darrell Waltrip in the Johnson-Hodgson Budweiser Chevrolet. Darrell, 37 years of age. Already this year, he's won $167,835 on the Grand National Circuit. Lake Speed in the Bullfrog Nets Chevrolet has run into some problems with traffic in the last few laps and has fallen behind Waltrip somewhat, but Darrell is not exactly pulling away from Lake.
No, it's been sort of like an accordion. Lake has been further behind in the last couple of laps than what he is right now. He caught up a little bit when Waltrip approached the number 8 car of Bobby Hill, and there's Morgan Shepherd, who was on the lead lap for a long time today. Even though he's not going to finish in the top 10, it's got to be considered a successful day. But back to the Lake Speed thing, but it seems as though every time Waltrip gets by a lap car, Lake has just a little more trouble getting around that slower car than what Darrell did. And meanwhile, Bill Elliott is breathing right down Lake Speed's neck every once in a while, but Elliott also seems to get delayed whenever he comes up on slower traffic.
And behind Bill Elliott is this man, Richard Petty, running in fourth spot. There is Bill Elliott passing Trevor Boyes out on the backstretch, going into turn number 3. And Bill Elliott now has clear sailing between himself and second place Lake Speed. There is a good look at Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia, who won the race at Riverside late last year for his first Grand National victory. Lake Speed right ahead of him in second position.
You know, we were talking about numbers a little earlier in regards to Lake Speed. We had 3 people here who had birthdays within a couple of days of this race. Jeff Bodine, D.K. Ulrich, and Dick Brooks. It certainly didn't help him. Petty has slowed in turn 3.
Richard Petty, who was running fourth, is headed for the pits.
Boy, was he headed for the pits. He came tearing off at turn number 4. I didn't know that he was going slow enough to really get in. Here's a man in a hurry as he roars down pit lane.
The crew's moving out to change the tires on the right side of the car. Fuel is also being dumped in. Doesn't look like it's a mechanical problem, just a routine pit stop for Richard Petty, but unfortunately is coming during green, and Richard Petty is about to get lapped by Darrell Waltrip. Waltrip flashes by. Richard Petty goes a lap down to the leaders.
Well, Richard had stopped last just 30 laps ago. You can go 70 laps easily here, at least on a load of fuel at Darlington. But Petty had stopped just 30 laps ago, so he obviously felt there was something severely wrong with one of the tires, or he would not have brought it in.
It's been a smooth race for Darrell Waltrip. Compared to some of the other cars, his is bright and shiny still. What amazes me is, Larry, all the accidents that we have had, all the incidents of contact between cars and the wall as Petty comes in for a second time in as many laps, and still there are a lot of cars still out there on the racetrack.
Well, that's a trademark of Grand National stock car racing. The point system is a great inspiration to repair your car during the running of a race, regardless of the number of laps that you're behind, to get back out there and pick up points. There is a lot of money at stake. As we look in the upper right-hand side of your screen, you see the leader, Darrell Waltrip, putting yet another lap on Richard Petty sitting in the pits. And right behind Waltrip, you see that white car with the green trim, saw it coming down the front stretch. There it is coming in, is Lake Speed.
Richard Petty is now 2 laps down after having run in third and fourth positions for many, many laps. Darrell Waltrip, the leader in car number 11, the Budweiser Chevrolet.
Darrell had a race won here at Darlington, South Carolina. the Southern 500 as a matter. No, it was this race. A year ago, it looked like everything was smooth sailing, and just 2 laps from the finish, he had an electrical problem which slowed him down and allowed Harry Gant to win. So, in the tradition of Yogi Berra, they really ain't over till it's over here at Darlington. We told you earlier that Gant led only 2 laps last year, and it was the final 2, but those are the only 2 that count in terms of victory.
As we continue to watch Darrell Waltrip, we'll talk a little bit about the history of this racetrack. It was built in 1950. The first race won by Johnny Mance. In 1961, until 1961, they started, if you can believe this, 3 abreast for the start of a race. The track is narrow as it is, and can you imagine a 3 abreast start? As we go back and check the progress of Cale Yarborough, who is also a couple of laps down. And in 1963, this race was started with a Le Mans type start. That is, the drivers ran to their cars, got in and took off, and the race was also run in 2 heats in 1963.
That race was won by Joe Weatherly, but the most amazing part of the history of this racetrack for me is the fact that they built it when they did. When they built this track back in 1950, the longest racetracks that stock cars raced on were 1-mile dirt tracks, as Cale Yarborough has a close call going into turn number 1 there,
very
sneaking
close
to the inside of Terry Labonte. But what an awesome sight this place had to be in 1950 when they built this place. It really was the equivalent back then. If you erected a racetrack now that suddenly jumped the speeds to 267 miles per hour, that would be the equivalent announcement in 1984. That's how dramatic the change was when they put up this racetrack. A 1 1/4 mile racetrack, high banked, and we're going to race 500 miles. No stock car had ever raced more than 100 miles before. A lot of people thought it couldn't be done. They started 75 cars back in 1950, and about 50 of them finished. And Johnny Mance, who really out-chess played the entire field. He won with a lighter weight car, a 6-cylinder Plymouth. He was able to conserve on tires, and he didn't exactly putter around. He averaged about 75 miles an hour, but he really out-snookered everybody from coast to coast.
Cale Yarborough is not on the lead lap. He is in 7th position. 5 cars are on the lead lap. And Terry Labonte here in car number 44 is in 4th position. Right behind him is Benny Parsons. Benny is still out there, but not in contention to win the event here today. Well, we have seen many, many incidents of tire wear here at Darlington, South Carolina today, and ESPN and NASCAR present a track fact.
Softer tires are faster tires. On the right-hand side of the car, however, Goodyear has manufactured a tire which is a bit harder than the one which is manufactured for the left side. The rules say the left side tires stay on the left, the right side tires stay on the right.
And you don't want to change the 2 either, because that means a fine.
Well, last week at Rockingham, Terry Labonte's team was caught with the tires on the wrong side of the car, but now it seems as though they had been labeled improperly, and the latest information we have is that Goodyear is considering paying the fine that was levied to the team, because they have indicated that it may have been their error and not the Dale Inman crew chief team, the Piedmont Airlines team's fault.
Terry Labonte, 4th place here in the TranSouth 500. 150 laps remaining. And the skies continue to darken, although it doesn't look quite as rainy as it did about 10 or 15 minutes ago. The courtesy flag is being displayed to some of the slower cars as they come down the front stretch, allowing Terry Labonte to pass. Benny Parsons is right behind Terry, and Bobby Allison is back in the pit area with a rubber change on the right side of the car.
Bobby Allison, the man who won the 1983 Grand National Winston Cup Championship, and the fender that we noted earlier that was flapping in the breeze. They're going to use this opportunity on this routine pit stop to remove that fender, and NASCAR officials standing over the shoulders of the crew, making sure that this is the proper thing to do. And I think it's an excellent decision, because you would not want that fender to rip off and fly back into the face of another competitor. So a nice opportunity to get what was left of the left front fender off, and now both Joe Ruttman and Bobby Allison look like a modified.
And so the race continues. with Darrell Waltrip in the lead in this 500-miler at Darlington. We'll be right back. Cars that have dropped out of the TranSouth 500 here at Darlington: Lenny Pond, David Pearson, Jody Ridley, Tim Richmond, Buddy Baker, Jeff Bodine, and D.K. Ulrich. Also, Dick Brooks, Rusty Wallace, and Morgan Shepherd. Those are the only cars out of the race at this point. The leader is Darrell Waltrip. Here he is down the main straightaway, crossing the start-finish line, completing another lap. In second position is Lake Speed. Third is number 9, Bill Elliott. In fourth place is Terry Labonte in car number 44. There he is to the inside of the racetrack. And in fifth position is Dale Earnhardt in car number 3. Now those cars on the lead lap. 5 cars on the lead lap. A lap down in sixth is Cale Yarborough. And in seventh place, also a lap down, is Tommy Ellis. Let's go down to Dick Berggren.
Well, down many laps is our man Benny Parsons. He is not out there trying to win the race anymore. That's done and over with. He's too many laps down. What he is doing instead is using this afternoon as a very extended practice. He goes out, he runs some laps, they take it into the garage, they change springs and that sort of thing, put it back out again, see how it goes, bring it back in the garage, change some more. It's a very wise use of this afternoon for a driver that's down many, many laps.
Benny just passed Terry Labonte out there on the racetrack, so the car is running well for Benny right now. Picking up on our standings as we watch Terry Labonte in fourth position. In eighth place, 2 laps down, is Ron Bouchard. Ninth place, also 2 laps down, is Richard Petty. And in 10th, also 2 laps down, is Harry Gant. There is Darrell Waltrip, and we're beginning to notice that Lake Speed in second place is closing in ever so slightly.
We are right now in the closing moments of one of our longest green flag periods of this race. Most of the leaders pitted around lap 167. Within the next 10 laps, they will probably be coming in. It's possible that Waltrip's tires have gone away just a little more than Lake's, and this may be Lake's opportunity to catch up if Lake's tires have lasted a little better than what Darrell's have. So we've been in a long green flag. Expect pit stops, I would say, within the next 10 laps. And, you know, a lot of interesting things can happen. Last week's race was won in the pits, although we are only just about 300 miles into this race, maybe 315, 320 miles. So we've got a ways to go. That is, if we're not interrupted by rain or darkness.
Tommy Ellis in car number 4 is in 7th position, a lap down to the leaders, and doing a good job out there. Tommy Ellis in car number 4. Tommy, hailing from the North Carolina area.
Tommy had a 4th place at a race in Charlotte back in 1982 in his own car, so he is not completely new to the Grand National scene. Many of you out there know him as a many times winner and a former national champion on the late model sportsman circuit. One of the most volatile and feisty guys you'll find anywhere, but he's very serious about Grand National stock car racing, and he feels as though that accepting this ride in the number 4 car will perhaps open some doors for him in Grand National racing that have not been available to him before.
And there is the interval that has closed between Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed. Hoss Ellington indicated to us that if there was the slightest indication of rain, that he would inform his driver, Lake Speed, to pass Darrell Waltrip and go into the lead in case the race would be called at that time. Well, Lake is now right up on the back end of the Darrell Waltrip car and is finding the opportunity to go into the lead.
It's been like doing chin-ups, you know. It gets harder and harder the closer you get. It's like Speed's up to 12 or 13 chin-ups now and is trying to kick out one more. Bob, remember these guys down at Daytona? This looks like the sportsman race when Lake and Darrell were a member of about 5 guys who were going at it tooth and nail in the latter stages of that race.
They finished in this order, though. Waltrip won the race and Lake Speed finished second.
Well, not exactly that order. I think they were like side by side and banging doors as they came across the start-finish line.
230 laps have been completed now. There is Trevor Boys in car number 48. The Hilton McQuaig Chevrolet.
Brand new paint job on the race car for this week. If you've been to a couple of Grand National races this year, you remember the car was very red. blood red, you might say, and they've changed the paint job on the car this week. Trevor's been out there all afternoon. As you might expect, he's been involved in a couple of altercations, but very few have not. Trevor Boyce, a guy who is a former midget champion from the Pacific Northwest. He came south to the Midwest area, south and east to the Midwest area about 5 years ago with his dad, Buddy Boyce. They actually had a car entered at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, an Indianapolis car. They also came east with a couple of midgets, and Trevor ran a full season on the USAC Midget Trail. But last year he decided to turn his attention to Grand National stock car racing here in the Southeast. That's Team Canada, the only driver representing the Dominion of Canada competing in Grand National stock car racing. The hometown for Trevor Boyce, Calgary in Alberta.
This is Trevor's third race of 1984 as Cale Yarborough goes around. He finished 28th at Bristol and 29th at North Wilkesboro. Trevor Boyce in car number 48 with 135 laps to go. Benny Parsons also passing Trevor out there in turn number 3. Down in turn number 1, the leaders have caught some traffic. Here is Bobby Hillen being lapped, or about to be lapped, coming off of turn number 2 by Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed.
You see the pause. Darrell Waltrip did a stutter step as he went around Bobby Hillen. Bobby, of course, is one of the inexperienced drivers in terms of this racetrack. Bobby did give Darrell and Lake enough room, but you know something? Darrell also gave Bobby enough room, and I think it was a pretty good effort on that particular lap by both of those drivers.
Well, if there's ever a track that you have to display sportsmanship and courtesy at, it is this one, because in many parts of the racetrack there is just one lane and somebody has got to give.
Darrell Waltrip looking to move back into the victory column on a super speedway, something he has not done since October of 1982.
Now let's go down to the pit area and Dick Bergeron. Dick, I think it's a lot cooler down there in the pit area where you are since the clouds and the rain earlier today, right?
Yeah, the weather has really declined. It's getting cooler down here. The wind has picked up again. It is definitely feeling like rain. But I'll tell you, Larry, you were talking about the drivers displaying courtesy on the racetrack. One of the reasons we're going to see a lot of that here this afternoon is that during the drivers' meeting, the NASCAR officials told them specifically that the guys who are being lapped need to get a little more courtesy from the guys who are doing the lapping. In fact, he said, if you guys aren't courteous enough to each other, we'll have a black flag in. That means bring you in for a consultation, cause you some problems. So some of it certainly is originated from the drivers themselves. They do care about each other. They do want to try to take good care and have good manners on the speedway. But NASCAR, the sanctioning body, also makes sure that good manners are displayed.
23 cars are still on the speedway. We started 38, and of the 23, almost half of them, 9 of them, have severe damage somewhere around the race car. 2 of them that do not have severe damage, the number 11 of Waltrip and the number 1 of Lake Speed. Well, I'll tell you, the aces are doing it. All aces up front. 2 aces in first and number 1 ace in second place.
Still running in third place is Bill Elliott, but he is about a half a lap behind Lake Speed in second place. Terry Labonte then is in fourth, and he is about a quarter of a lap behind Bill Elliott, and in fifth place is Dale Earnhardt, who is about a straightaway then behind Terry Labonte. So things are beginning to be strung out just a little bit, except for the fact that up front, Waltrip and Lake Speed continue to run very, very close to each other.
Yeah, they have really put away the rest of the field. It looked like at one point that Bill Elliott was getting ready to make some type of threat to move up toward the front, but it really hasn't happened. Lake Speed has not been able to get around Waltrip, but he certainly has not let him get away. There you see the 2 leaders coming out of turn number 4, getting ready to put another lap on the Ford of Tommy Gale as they streak down the front stretch. Tommy Gale's been out there all day. He looks unscathed. Jimmy Means is continuing to run. Buddy Arrington is still on the racetrack. Greg Sachs. Joe Ruttman is still out. Bobby Allison, of course, Cale Yarborough running up front. Harry Gant has lost a couple of laps. He continues to race in the speedway. Terry Labonte in the number 44 car is on the lead lap with the leaders. We haven't mentioned him in quite some time. He's in 4th place, but well behind not only Elliott, but of course also the 2 leaders, Waltrip and Lake Speed.
Harry Gant and Ron Bouchard battling out there at the end of the backstretch.
I believe that's for 8th position.
I believe you're right. Harry Gant now moves into 8th position, and Ron Bouchard back tonight.
Well, Bouchard, Gant, and Richard Petty, who just snuck into the scene, they're all on the same lap.
Bill Elliott is into the pits. So the driver who was running in 3rd position has come in for a pit stop. And I think we're going to have to consider this routine. It's time now for everybody to come in, since we have not had a caution recently. It's time to come in and get some fuel and get those tires changed.
Bob, we mentioned about 10 laps ago that it would be about time. Lap 167 was the last time they stopped. They should be in those 73 laps here. 167 plus 73 equals 240, and that is exactly where Elliott stopped. And I'll tell you what, we have not any cautions. Unless Waltrip and Speed are getting unbelievably good mileage, they may be stretching this stop a little bit. They have gone a considerable distance, and they have been racing. They have not been rusting those cars. They're either getting great mileage or they're stretching this one a bit.
Well, right down in front of us is the pit area of Darrell Waltrip, and Junior Johnson is out with the signboard, and the other crew members are getting the tires, preparing for the stop, which could come right now, because Darrell has dropped to the inside of the racetrack, allowing Lake Speed to go around. Lake Speed jumps into the lead. Is Darrell Waltrip coming in for a pit stop? Yes, he is. He brakes coming off of turn number 3. Let's go down to Dick Berggren, and here comes Darrell Waltrip in for his stop. Dick?
It's going to be at least a 2-tire stop under the green flag. They've been working on tires here for about the last 5 or 8 minutes. This is not something that's come up suddenly, but something that has been quite prepared. Junior Johnson out with the signboard, one jack underneath the right-hand side of the car. That's Jeff Hammond, the crew chief, has just jacked it up. They got the right front tire loose. Off it comes. The right rear tire is on its way out. They've got the right front on again. It was a 2-tire stop, plus a full load of fuel, and the crew members are still dancing. Boy, they flew through that one.
And Darrell Waltrip goes back out onto the racetrack. Dale Earnhardt, who is running in the top 5, is also in for a stop. And Darrell Waltrip did get out ahead of Lake Speed, so he did not lose a lap, although Lake is right behind Darrell on the racetrack.
About a 15.5-second stop for Waltrip. Speed has not come in yet. We'll see how Haas Ellington and crew plays it. They also made no chassis adjustments on Waltrip's car. Obviously,
here comes Lake.
They're pretty happy.
Lake Speed is coming into the pits. He dropped low coming out of turn number 3. And again, let's go to Dick Berggren to call this pit stop.
And here we go. Jack Mann on the outside. They're ready for the fuel. Here come the tires around to the right side. One lug wrench on the right rear tire. One lug wrench on the left rear tire. Windshield being wiped. One can of fuel is in. The right front is virtually done. Get ready to drop the jack. The rear is done. The front is done. And there goes Lake Speed with a push from the crew.
Good pit stop. Darrell Waltrip is coming off of turn number 4. He crosses the start-finish line into turn number 1, and he is going to fall in right behind. Lake Speed is going to fall in right behind Darrell Waltrip. So really nothing accomplished by those pit stops. They're still right together on the track.
Here's an interesting comparison. On a handheld watch up here, we had Waltrip stop at 15.27 seconds. We had Lake Speed stop at 15.33. There was 0.6 of a difference, 0.6 of a second difference between the 2 pit stops, and the difference on the track right now is about 0.7 of a second.
Terry Labonte is shown as the leader of the race because of the pit stops. Terry Labonte in front with Waltrip second and Lake Speed in 3rd place right now, but Terry Labonte has not pitted, and we anticipate his stop very soon. He's on the main straightaway now, will not come in for a stop this time, but will need some fuel in that car very shortly. Ricky Rudd has made a pit stop. He's back out. So is Dave Marcus, as we continue to watch Terry Labonte to find out whether or not his pit stop will come on this lap. Dale Earnhardt is running right ahead of Terry Labonte, and right behind Labonte on the racetrack is the severely damaged car of Joe Rudman.
Well, Bob, by our calculations up here, we believe that Labonte is out of sync with the rest of the cars in terms of pit stops. Labonte pitted later than everybody. He came in about lap 179, so Terry can go a little further. At this point, it's too early to tell whether or not that will help him out at the end of the race. It depends on whether or not we go green the rest of the way and when that last 100 miles falls into place in terms of being green. But Labonte's got about a 10 or 12 lap cushion on the rest of it.
Here he comes into the pit area for his stop. Labonte coming to his pit very quickly. Here's Dick Berggren.
This is going to be more than just gas and tires. They're going to give this fella a clean set of goggles. They went chasing around to try to find them, and he's got them on now. They've just done a goggle change. The other change that they're making, which we haven't seen in the 2 previous pit stops, crew chief Dale Inman just worked on the suspension on the left rear corner of the car. He has adjusted the suspension. It should run better now than it's been running before.
It was a very good stop for Terry, and he's going to go onto the racetrack about a half a lap behind Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed.
13.65 seconds stop for Labonte, so he picked up about a second and a half.
Well, the TranSouth 500 is being brought to you by Burns-O-Matic, makers of the new Panther Instant Firing Torch Gun, the torch gun that lets you handle home fix-up jobs fast. Don't face another weekend without it. And by world-famous Bardol. Get Bardol, the engine saver. 250 laps have been completed at the TranSouth 500 in Darlington, South Carolina. Darrell Waltrip is back in the lead. We welcome you back to the TranSouth 500 in Darlington, South Carolina. Bob Jenkins, Larry Newber, and Dick Berggren. Been a long afternoon of racing. This race should have been over by now, but we had a rain interruption for about 51 minutes. Make that 28 minutes and 51 seconds. And skies are cloudy right now, but there has been no evidence of rain. The race is continuing, and a good race it is. Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed 1 and 2 on the racetrack.
For Lake Speed, it has been a most gratifying performance. He would certainly like to cap it off with a win. I'll tell you, he's been behind Darrell Waltrip by as much as 15 car lengths 2 or 3 times during the last 50 laps. Every time he seems to be able to catch up, but he can't get over the hurdle.
The editor of Stock Car Racing magazine, Dick Berggren, is the man who's been running up and down the pits all afternoon. Dick, where are you now?
Right now I'm in Terry Labonte's pit. The reason that he had to come in and change his goggles is he was wearing these, the dark goggles. The sun was out when the race started, but it's got very, very dark here, and anybody with goggles like this is going to have a hard time seeing from here on in. So this may be the first of several drivers to come in and change their goggles.
We still have more than 100 laps to go, 110 laps to go before this race finishes. Waltrip, who has not won a super speedway race since Rockingham in 1982, is leading at this point. And Lake Speed, who has never won a Winston Cup Grand National race, is running in second spot. Third is Bill Elliott. Fourth is Terry Labonte. And fifth is Dale Earnhardt. Those cars on the lead lap, a lap down. In sixth spot is Cale Yarborough. Seventh is Ron Bouchard. Eighth is Tommy Ellis. And ninth is Richard Petty. Neil Bonnet is into the pits for some service on the right side of that car. Neil has not been really competitive today. He started this race in 8th position. He has 13 Winston Cup wins, but he is now 8 laps down and not a contender.
And Neil is one of only 5 guys who has won at least one race in each of the past 5 seasons. The other 3 are pretty obvious. But Bonnet has won at least once, and very few people have done that year after year over the past 5 years.
There once again, the first 2 positions, Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed. Paul Sellington has told us that for right now, Lake is content to sit in second position. You get points for leading the race, but Lake has already led and therefore will pick up the 5 laps. And he's just kind of biding his time at this point in the race, staying behind Darrell Waltrip. And it's really tough to say whether or not he has the muscle to go around Waltrip. That's speculation that we'll have to leave until later on.
I got to admit, Bob, when Haas first gave us that comment, I kind of thought that because of the threatening weather that everybody was flat out. But Lake has shown us the ability to catch back up with Darrell, and I'm beginning to believe Haas. I think that we haven't seen every single card that Haas and Lake are holding.
Here is is the number 51 car driven by Greg Sachs, a rookie this year on the Winston Cup Grand National Trail. He is one of those guys who have come down from the northeastern portion of the United States in the New York area to run in Grand National competition. He is in the battle for Rookie of the Year. He's in the Sachs & Sons Chevrolet. Started the race in 28th position. Right now he is 25th in Winston Cup points for 1984. His best career finish was a 16th at Atlanta, and that was in the Atlanta 500 earlier this year. He missed the Bristol race, but at North Wilkesboro he was 18th. He was 34th at Rockingham, 24th at Richmond, and 18th in the Daytona 500.
Well, of course, Sachs is a modified driver. There goes Dave Marcus streaming by on the inside. Marcus was on the lead lap in this race for quite some time, and he had a lot of problems. He was involved in a long spin through turns 3 and 4. Obviously, he touched a couple of things en route during that spin. Yeah. A race car or two here or there, the outside retaining wall. Marcus has shown signs of brilliance in 1984. From time to time, this number 75 car out of the racing stables of Bob Rahilly and Butch Mock has been fast. Of course, this is the team that Neil Bonnet drove for last season. They've gone back to the traditional colors of the Raymock team, the Petty Blue, and Dave Marcus is their driver for 1984.
Here is Jimmy Means in car number 52. Jimmy started this race in 30th position in the Broadway Motors Pontiac.
When Jimmy came to Grand National Racing, he would have liked to have had the number 92. That was his number in slot cars when he was growing up, and that was the number he ran some late model sportsmen with. And he wanted to run 92, but a fellow by the name of Skip Manning had it when Jimmy Means came up, and that was the closest he could come to 92 was 52, and he stayed with it. Jimmy has become a regular on the Grand National Stock Car Trail. He's one of those hardworking independents that not only shows up for every race, but finds some way to get in every time, and that's his job. That is Jimmy Means' office. That is what he does for a living. He owns, operates, maintains, and keeps that race car going, and how he makes a living.
Running right ahead of Jimmy Means on the racetrack is Kyle Petty there in the number 7 car to the inside of the racetrack. This weekend, not quite as good for Kyle as last weekend was. Kyle ran strong all day and finished in 5th place. There he is in the 7-Eleven Ford.
You know, Bob, you and I were talking with Jeff Bodine about a week ago in regards to Kyle Petty, and he was sharing with us a story about Kyle Petty competing on dirt last summer in 1983 at a track that he was invited to go to up in the northeast part of the country, and the fact that Kyle got in a race car, this is a 3rd-mile dirt track, mind you, that was not necessarily a back marker, but a car that ran between 8th and 15th position, and Petty was a runner-up in the race on dirt. The car's never been faster since, we're told.
Now, here's an interesting situation because right ahead of Darrell Waltrip and Lake Speed, the leaders, is Dale Earnhardt, who is in 5th position. So they are about to lap the 5th place car. Pulling alongside of Earnhardt in turn number 1 is Darrell Waltrip. And he passes Dale, so Dale Earnhardt now goes a lap down, and we only have 4 cars on the lead lap. They are Terry Labonte, Bill Elliott, Lake Speed, and Darrell Waltrip. Lake Speed still just about the same distance behind Darrell Waltrip as he has been for the last 40 or 50 laps. About 2 or 3 car lengths. The question is, could he pass if he wanted to? Well, we'll answer that question a little bit later, and we'll be back with more of our live coverage from Darlington in just a moment. We are back at Darlington, and it is raining on the backstretch. We've had reports that sprinkles are beginning to be felt on the backstretch. What does it mean? Well, it means that if Lake Speed can pass Darrell Waltrip, he'd better do it now, because at any time, the race, if it continues to rain hard, could be halted for good, and the driver in first place at that point would be declared the winner. Here is Waltrip continuing to run ahead of Lake Speed. We'll see if Lake can pull off the pass here in the next few laps.
Waltrip looked like Earl Campbell going down the backstretch the last time. There were a couple of lap cars between him, and he just blasted through there. He really threw caution to the wind, but boy, the car stuck to the racetrack like glue. Waltrip was taking no chances, and I guarantee you that both Waltrip and Speed are thinking the same thing that we're thinking. When is this race going to be slowed again? And if it's slowed one more time under yellow, do we go red? And if we go red, will there be enough dryness as well as light? This race could be called for either reason.
it's almost 5 o'clock on the East Coast, and there maybe is another hour and a half, 2 hours of daylight left, but that is certainly a consideration at this point.
Speed was on the button early coming out of turn 2. I thought that maybe this was the lap he wanted to make his move. You see him inching up on Waltrip. Maybe Lake is getting ready to try it.
Yeah, I think he's anticipating a position that he can set up, Darrell. I don't think he has found it quite yet, but he is trying very hard out there. We'll continue to watch this situation involving Waltrip and Lake Speed. There is Stevie Waltrip, Darrell's wife, who scores for the team, and right beside her is Junior Johnson, who is looking skyward, saying, oh boy, I hope if it rains, Darrell can stay in the lead.
What do you call Junior Johnson? He's not the crew chief. He's got Doug
You
Richard.
call him Mr.
I think, you know, the spiritual leadership that he gives, maybe Ayatollah is a good name, eh? Whatever. He has the secret to victory on the Grand National Trail. He has won so many times and so many championships. And right now, they're hanging out on the edge of the ledge. Johnson, the guy running the team, and Waltrip, the driver, and Jeff Hammond, the crew chief, the three of them, fingernails right on the edge of that window. They're hanging out the motel window because Lake Speed is inside trying to push him out. They're trying to hold on. So far, they've been able to do it. Waltrip, I think, hit bottom that time. I saw a big flash come out underneath. I thought engine problems, but no, I think the car bottomed out and you saw a big spark or a big flash of spark.
I think that's pretty easy to do over there in the second turn because there is a sharp drop-off between the banking that they run on and the apron of the track, and it could be that he just bottomed out. Now they come down the straightaway once again, out of the backstretch, headed for turn number 3, and Lake Speed is still behind Darrell Waltrip, and we haven't had any reports recently of it raining harder back there, although there are a few drops of rain beginning to show up on the glass in our broadcast booth. So this thing, it has still a lot of questions to be answered. If the race is to go to its absolute conclusion, we still have less than 100 laps to go. 276 laps have been completed after 367.
The 293 lap point, which is about 20 laps from now, will be 400 miles. So it gives you an idea of how much longer we have to go in terms of the prescribed distance. By the way, as we watch the leaders, there are still 3 other cars on the lead lap. Bill Elliott, Terry Labonte, and Dale Earnhardt. They have not figured anywhere near this battle for the, with no longer a battle for the lead. Suddenly Lake Speed has lost a great deal of distance between himself and Waltrip.
There's the indication of how competitive this race has been. 17 lead changes here this afternoon. Now, Dale Earnhardt has dropped a lap down, Larry, so there are only 4 cars on the lead lap at this point.
Boy, what happened to Lake Speed in the last lap? He is suddenly about a full second behind Waltrip. It must have been lap traffic. All of a sudden, you look up, and instead of 3 or 4 car lengths, we've got a whole corner between the 2 of them.
Yeah, there's also a car between Waltrip and Lake Speed now, namely Ron Bouchard at number 47. There is Ron following Waltrip into turn number 3. So Lake Speed definitely is falling off the pace here. Why, we don't know. It could be that he just got into some lap traffic. There is Lake coming out of turn number 4. The car right behind him is driven by Neil Bonnet, Waltrip's teammate. And it looks like that Neil is looking for the chance to pass Lake. If Lake is to drop out of this race with some kind of a problem, it would be a disaster and a heartbreak for him because he has run so strong in the race today. There's Bobby Hillen in the Trap Rock Industries Buick, car number 8, started in 21st position here today. And Bobby Hillen, formerly from Midland, Texas, and the son of a guy that used to own some Indy cars, now is devoting his full time to Grand National stock car racing.
He also gets my vote for the snazzy new paint job of 1984. The black and yellow with the red trim looks pretty fast. Bobby Hill, at age of 19, has moved to the southeast to concentrate on race car driving. He was an outstanding high school football player. He played on the line back home in Midland, Texas. He had a couple of opportunities to pursue college football, but decided to stay with racing. He also, of course, was in a position with its dad's stature in Indianapolis-type car racing to go that route. But stock car racing is what attracted his attention. And Bobby Hillen came to the east for the first time last year. career title. Looks like he will be one of the contenders for that, along with people like Rusty Wallace, of course.
Darrell Waltrip has led 120 out of 367 laps to this point. He is off of turn number 4, and the interval between himself and Lake Speed is now about 4 seconds.
Lake Speed has been passed by Ron Bouchard within the last lap and a half.
Well, let's go down to Dick Bergeron once again.
The cheering has stopped in Lake Speed's pit. They say the temperature gauge is beginning to climb. That is the problem. That is the reason Lake is dropping back, overheating.
Too bad for Lake Speed. But that's the way it goes in the sport of automobile racing.
Well, the problem with an overheating situation like that is that it's like sitting on a time bomb. You're not really sure exactly what it is. You can't stop and check it out when you're in contention for victory. It's something that seldom goes away, although sometimes it does. You just wish that you had some idea of what really is causing it, and you just have to sit there and write it out.
Darrell Waltrip is leading the TranSouth 500, the Junior Johnson prepared car. Off of turn number 4, crossing the start-finish line, completing lap 284, passing Dave Marcus as they go into turn number 1.
You know, Bob, a point here. If it doesn't rain, and I think the lighting will hold up. It should be light till about 6:30 or so, light enough at least to continue to race cars. If it doesn't rain, you know, we still have a long ways to go in this race. We have well over 100, well, not well over, we had 100 miles and so to go yet. We are only 4/5 of the way through this race, and that mark takes place in 8 laps. 285 laps are complete. 8 more laps will be 293. That'll be 400 miles. There's still a long ways to go in this race. Everybody's got to make at least one more pit stop yet. So a lot could happen if we are not interrupted by rain.
So perhaps we should look back to find out who else is in contention of this race. Besides Lake Speed in 2nd position, Bill Elliott is 3rd, and Terry Labonte is 4th as Richard Petty slows down. Now, Richard was running in 7th position, a lap down to the leaders, and he is headed for the pits once again. We'll be back with more live coverage from Darlington, South Carolina, as ESPN's Auto Racing 84 presents the TranSouth 500. Neil, who's your favorite singer or musical group?
That's awful easy for me. With my home in Alabama, it's got to be Alabama.
I like the Oak Ridge Boys. Sorry, Alabama.
Well, I tell you, it's tough. I've met a couple of those people, and I like them or what have you, but I got to say, Olivia Newton-John, I guess.
Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. There's no doubt it. Detroit City. I like Alabama.
A wide display of musical likes by the various race drivers involved here.
Liberace got no votes on
No, we couldn't find anybody that considered Liberace.
No, you couldn't find anybody who would admit to voting.
That could be. Well, Darrell Waltrip is in the lead, and he is about to lap Terry Labonte. Labonte is running right ahead of Darrell Waltrip. As Darrell does, that will mean that there are only 3 cars on the lead lap. Here is Darrell working on Terry right now into turn number 1. Waltrip backing off momentarily to get through the corners. Terry Labonte in number 44 is running in 4th position right now on the lead lap. Darrell Waltrip is trying to put him a lap down. I don't think he's going to get it accomplished here in turn 3 and 4 either. Now Terry moves high on the racetrack and very courteously allows Darrell Waltrip to lap him. So now only 3 cars on the lead lap.
I'll tell you, Darlington Raceway gives you nothing. You can be running twice as fast as somebody, but you have to work for every single pass at this racetrack. It is truly a remarkable place.
And some smoke also was seen coming from the rear end of that Labonte car. Meanwhile, back in the pack, Harry Gant in car number 33 and Tommy Ellis in car number 4 are running in 9th and 10th position. There's Harry in the number 33 car in 9th place. Don't forget, he's the defending champion of this event, having led the last 2 laps last year after Darrell Waltrip broke.
Harry's had a hard day at the office. He really has. He came in as a favorite, He had qualified reasonably well. He started this race on the inside of the 4th row in 7th position. He was fast early on. He lost a lap. He got it back. It looked like he was going to be in contention to lead this race at one point. Then he had more problems. He's been able to avoid all the accidents, something he did not do at Bristol a couple weeks back. But he's had a tough day. The team has struggled today, but this team is having a good season. We haven't shown that just rocket ship type speed that we saw from them 2 years ago, but they've really been concentrating on consistency and finishing races. And I really believe it's going to start paying dividends. I think if there are 2 teams on the Grand National Trail who figure perhaps to win more races in the next couple of seasons. He right now runs in 8th position. They're battling. He's running 9th. Now he's moving into the inside of Bouchard. That is 7th, 8th, and 9th now, we're told on the screen at the same time. If I were to say that there are 2 teams in the Grand National Trail that figure to win more races in the next couple of seasons than they have the last 2, I believe it's Elliott and Harry Gant, just by the approach the teams have made.
Some damage to the Harry Gant car, but not nearly as much as to some of the others that have been involved in various skirmishes and shunts here on this 1.366 mile racetrack at Darlington.
400 miles down, 100 miles to go. Mark right now. 5 seconds between Waltrip, Lake Speed, one more pit stop.
Tommy Ellis passes Ron Bouchard, moves into 8th place. Bouchard back to 9th here. And Bobby Allison. And his car is a graphic example of how badly damaged a race car can be and still continue to be in competition, is in the pits once again. They've changed the tires on the right side of the car, and you look at the lack of front end on that car.
Well, it's a tribute to the perseverance and the overall attitude of this team. They've had so many massive disappointments in 1984. They came into the season with such high hopes. They really thought they had eliminated all of their bad luck. He was just barely able, Bobby Allison was, to hold on and beat this guy, Darrell Waltrip, last year for the points championship. Remember the suspected sabotage incident of the foreign chemicals and substance in the fuel of Bobby Allison at Riverside last year. They got over that and went on to become champion. Darrell Waltrip, champion the last 2 years. You've just seen in the last couple of seconds the last 3 champions in Winston Cup racing. There's the interval between first and second. Here comes Lake Speed down the front stretch, crosses the stripe. That was first cross for victory by Johnny Mance. And since that time, the greatest and the most legendary names in the history of stock car racing have crossed that line as the winner. This race in the spring has provided a lot more different victors than the Southern 500 has. Listen to the people who have won this race. Fireball Roberts, Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, Fred Lorenzen, Nelson Stacy. Remember the Cincinnati, Ohio driver who came south and did well for a couple of years, and the Hutcherson number 29 cars. Junior Johnson won here. David Pearson, of course, has won 7 times. Leroy won here. Buddy Baker, Bobby Allison, Benny Parsons, and Dale Earnhardt. And then we get, of course, to the modern-day winners. But don't forget old Herb Thomas and the fabulous Hudson Hornet. He won here once also.
Well, the first spring race here at Darlington was run back in 1957. Until that time, there was only one race here at Darlington in the fall. That first spring race, called the Rebel 300, was won by Fireball Roberts, and the fastest qualifier for that race was Paul Goldsmith. There have been various links as far as the spring race is concerned. It was the Rebel 300, then the Rebel 400, then the Rebel 500, and TranSouth now sponsors the race, so that's why it's called the TranSouth 500. Today's race is being led by Darrell Waltrip, and really he's looking pretty good at this time with about a 5-second lead on Lake Speed. And on the other hand, Speed has about a 5 or 6 second lead on the 3rd place driver, Bill Elliott. Here is Harry Gant, who is running in 6th place.
And Harry right up along the wall. I think he may have touched it. I don't know. He darted off of it, but he didn't touch it. He was close enough to smell it and got trouble in the 4th turn.
That's Ron Bouchard in number 47 as he spins, and Joe Ruttman has to get on the brakes to avoid hitting him. All of this is happening down in turn number 4 near the entrance to the pit area.
Well, I wonder if something's up there, because we had just commented about Harry. There he is, coming out of turn number 4. Great shot of Harry sliding up there, and whoa.
Close.
I told you, I think he smelled it, but he didn't hit it.
Yep.
And right behind him, not more than a second later, came Ron Bouchard, and that's what happened to Ron. He ended up like that.
Our 9th caution period of the afternoon. The right rear tire on that car is flatted, and the pit crew is talking to Ron now to determine whether or not he wants to go back out there. 301 laps have been completed. The pace car is coming out.
You can go 73 laps here at Darlington with a full load of fuel. That's an approximation. You got to go about 100 miles. We have completed 301. We've got 66 laps to go. If everybody pits now, they could go the distance without stopping, assuming they're getting normal mileage. Anticipate all of them coming in, and the first one is Waltrip. Now, bear in mind, this gives Lake Speed a chance to breathe here. They can check the car when it comes in. Maybe they can find out why it's overheating, maybe not. But when they get back out on the racetrack, they're going to be close in terms of the grid on the racetrack to Waltrip. This might be new life for Lake Speed.
Here's another interesting development. Terry Labonte beat Darrell Waltrip back to the line when the caution came out. So Terry Labonte goes back onto the lead lap, and we now have 4 cars on the lead lap. Tires being changed on both sides of the Darrell Waltrip car.
And who knows what kind of setup you get. You get a great set of tires. When you have your final pit stop here, you might be the fastest car in the racetrack. All sorts of things could be changed as a result of this stop. But once again, we're right at the edge of how far you can go. They can go the distance. We've got less than the 73 laps that everybody figures you have to do. So this should be the final stop unless there's another yellow flag.
Darrell Waltrip beat Lake out of the pits by a considerable time. However, of course, since the pace car is out there and the field is slowed, Lake will be able to close right in behind Darrell Waltrip. Cale Yarborough also pulling out of the pit area as we watch Darrell Waltrip catch up to the pace car. Bill Elliott, the 3rd place driver, also into the pits. And Terry Labonte is also coming in for a stop.
I'll tell you, Labonte and Elliott, they are amazing. The number of races, if you watch Grand National Stock Car Racing from week to week, the number of races, you get down to the final strokes, you see the red and white number 9 and the blue and white number 44. Last year, remember, 44 was also red and white. That they're up there in the top 5. And invariably, they're on the lead lap. No matter what happens, there are more flamboyant teams on the trail. People who run up front for the first couple of laps. People who are involved in head-to-head contests throughout the first half of the race. When you get down to the end, Elliott and Labonte, they're almost always there.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to call them very underrated race drivers. They never seem to catch the headlines. They never seem to do anything spectacular, but they are very, very consistent and are very often in the front when the checkered flag falls. So 4 cars still on the lead lap now with this guy, Darrell Waltrip. Lake Speed, Bill Elliott, and Terry Labonte are the other 3 on the lead lap. The lead lap is 304, and the spectators are on their feet anticipating a restart. About to go green once again at Darlington International Raceway. Pace car has pulled off of the track, and Darrell Waltrip will lead him down toward the green once again on lap number 305. We have 62 more laps to go. Waltrip takes off like a rocket as he crosses the line going down into turn number 1, leaving Lake Speed falling behind by a considerable distance. Bobby Allison is right behind Darrell Waltrip as they go down the backstretch with Richard Petty right behind Bobby Allison. But the Allison and Petty cars are not on the lead lap. Now Lake Speed moves to the inside and passes Bobby Allison going into turn number 1, but he still has Richard Petty between himself and Darrell Waltrip off of turn number 2. Well, Ernie Elliott, one of the crew members on the Bill Elliott car, is with Dick Berggren.
Ernie, how are you going to run the rest of the race?
Just as hard as we can go.
How is the car running?
Well, it's running pretty good, but we're still off a little bit on handling. We're trying to get the car dialed in. We got a bad set of tires on the last stop. We're just hoping now we made the right adjustment.
You won your last race in the rain. Is this sky an omen for you?
I hope.
And that's Ernie Elliott, brother to Bill Elliott, also crew chief for Bill Elliott.
Now, Bill Elliott is moving up well through the pack, and so is Terry Labonte in car number 44. They're all chasing Darrell Waltrip, this guy, number 11. And it looks like Darrell bottomed out again as Sparks came from underneath that race car once again for the second time, at least for the second time that we have noticed, as he came off of turn number 4, got down onto the apron, and the car bottomed out just a little bit.
Now, one thing's beginning to look pretty obvious, that Lake Speed can no longer handle Waltrip. Waltrip is out front, cutting a wake that's about 15 car lengths ahead of Lake Speed and seemingly pulling away. Now, if Lake's car is overheating, he is certainly not off of the throttle because he is able to stay up with Harry Gant, who is sandwiched between himself and Darrell. And also he sees Terry Labonte, the third running car, right in his rear view mirror. And Speed is doing well, keeping some distance between himself and Labonte, although Terry does look like he is moving in ever so slightly as they go down the backstretch. We're looking at Waltrip, the leader. Remember, he's comfortable right now, if you can call 10 or 15 car lengths comfortable. I guess here at Darlington, as long as you're not going sideways, you're comfortable.
That's about the size of it. Yeah, Terry Labonte is very definitely moving in on Lake Speed rather quickly now. Lake has been running in second position for a great portion of the race. Terry Labonte went a lap down but made it back up during the recent caution period. And now Terry Labonte is closing in quickly.
And Harry Gant is moving in on Waltrip. We're close in right now on Darrell. You can see him motoring through 3 and 4. Look at Gant moving in on Waltrip. Waltrip hitting the bottom of the racetrack very hard.
Yep. There's Harry Gant behind Darrell Waltrip.
Waltrip has slowed a little bit. Now, it could be just a wrinkle in his rhythm. You never know, but he is off the pace he was at a couple laps ago. We're splitting hairs, although there's heavy traffic coming up, and I guarantee you Darrell's going to be very careful working his way through traffic. Goes to the high side of Connie Saylor, in between turns 3 and 4, off of turn number 4. The track just cracks back to the left. It's a hard turn to the left. You saw Kyle Petty go by on the inside as Waltrip went around him, and you can see that Gant was able to move right up behind Darrell, but now Lake Speed is only about 5 car lengths back.
And Terry Labonte is only about 3 car lengths behind Lake Speed. So this race is far from over. Waltrip has demonstrated his ability to stay in front now for over 250 laps, but it is only the last lap that counts. And right now, Harry Gant is looking to pass Darrell Waltrip and get back another one of the laps that he is down. Flashed by the main straightaway into turn number 1. And while Gant is working on Waltrip, Lake Speed and Terry Labonte are pursuing from the rear.
Lake has indeed had just a little more problem with lap traffic than what Waltrip has, and Lake lost about 10 car lengths again that time, just going around Phil Parsons. 315 laps down this time by. That leaves us with 52 laps to go. 52 laps to go here at Darlington. We are well into the 400s in terms of the number of miles that are passed by. And right now, Waltrip's got a decision to make. Gant looks like he wants to get around. And look at this.
Terry Labonte sneaking underneath Lake Speed, and Terry Labonte moves into second position.
About to say that Waltrip has a decision to make. Smoke coming from underneath Labonte again. I think the car he's just screeching around the corners. And here's Waltrip now looking to the inside of Lake Speed. Yarborough looking to the inside of Lake Speed. Waltrip has got to decide whether or not to let Gant go by.
We noticed that smoke coming from underneath Labonte's car a few laps ago down in turn number 1. It could be that he's just smoking the tires badly in the turns. Terry Labonte is the current leader in the Winston Cup point standings right now, with Darrell Waltrip in second position as Harry Gant continues to work on Darrell Waltrip. Ricky Rudd is third in the point standings with Dale Earnhardt fourth and Bill Elliott in fifth. So Terry Labonte could add to his lead here today if he wins this race.
drove a Grand National car at this racetrack. Said he showed up here unintimidated. Said he probably just hadn't read all those stories about how difficult Darlington was supposed to be. And amazingly, in his very first Grand National race ever, here in the Southern 500, Terry Labonte finished third. He went on the next year and won the Southern 500. Then a third, then a fourth. Such has not been the good fortune of Terry Labonte, however, in the spring race. Twice, Terry Labonte has wrecked on the first lap. Once, he's made it almost to the end and had trouble. And he says he would just love to have something good happen to him here in this spring race.
Harry Gant has passed Darrell Waltrip, so Gant is now only one lap down. He is still in 7th position, but Harry Gant is now only 1 lap down. Picking up on the Labonte story, he has been in the top 10 every race this year except one. He was 12th at Richmond, at Daytona, but was 3rd, 2nd, 7th, 2nd, and 4th in the other races. And Larry, I am not so sure that that is a tire problem, that we are seeing the smoke coming from the rear end of that car.
I'm also beginning to wonder about Waltrip. There is so much consistency with that flash that we're seeing as he enters turn number 3. I'm still thinking, my instincts are telling me the car is just bottoming out. I don't think it could be. And Lake Speed is coming into the pits.
Yeah, this is a sad story for Lake Speed. Into the pit area once again, not a routine stop. It looks like that he has shut off the engine, and it is all over for the guy who has to be the hero of the race as far as I'm concerned, Lake Speed. He was also the hero yesterday, by golly, in a late model sportsman race here at Darlington. Ran very strong, was forced up into the wall by another competitor and bumped in and dropped out of competition for the win, but he ran very strong all day in the late model sports.
In Mississippi, he has also lived in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. A former world karting champion. He won that title in 1978. Same year Mario Andretti won the Formula One championship, by the way. And Lake Speed, who has performed so well here today, has his day go away.
Lake Speed is out of the race. We'll be back with more of the TranSouth 500 from Darlington, South Carolina, where we have completed 321 laps. Back at the TranSouth 500 for Grand National cars at Darlington International Raceway. 323 laps of 367 completed. Lake Speed, who is running in 2nd position, is out of the race. And so now we have Darrell Waltrip, followed by Terry Labonte, Bill Elliott, Cale Yarborough a lap down in 4th, and Dale Earnhardt a lap down in 5th position. We started this race with 18 Chevys, 6 Fords, 7 Pontiacs, 5 Buicks, 1 Dodge, and an Oldsmobile. And right now we have Waltrip in the lead with a Chevy. In 2nd position is Terry Labonte with a Chevy. 3rd place is Bill Elliott in a Ford. And in 4th position, the number 28 car of Cale Yarborough's, that of course the Hardee's Chevrolet.
And it's a case of the walking wounded still traversing this oval here in Darlington.
Unfortunately, we have to tell you that Lake Speed is out of the race after a great afternoon of competition, and he is nice enough to talk with our Dick Berkman.
You ran so well, but it's a disappointing finish.
Well, there's things that are going to happen in racing. That's one of them. You know, I thank the good Lord for a good, safe day, and I don't think anybody got hurt. You know, we ran the best we've run all in our lives so far in a career, in a short career. There's an awful lot of good things happen, even though, you know, one little bad thing did happen. So I have to just take my hat off, give it credit to the crew, Ellen and Hoss's crew, Shelton Pittman, and the guys put together an awfully good race car.
What was the final mechanical problem that put you out late?
I think we lost a valve early. I'd been running there after when I fell off of Darrell's back bumper. That's when I went on 7 cylinders right then. And I was running 2nd on 7 cylinders for a long time, and it just kept getting a little worse until it finally went. Anyway, you know, I can't complain. That's what I'm saying. I've been blessed to pieces, and we'll be back. You know, if we come up with a little additional sponsorship money, we're going to go for the championship and tear them up.
Well, he's out today, but he's still optimistic. Tough race driver. His best day ever, Lake Speed.
And Lake led this race 3 times for a total of 22 laps as Connie Saylor is into the pit area on the backstretch, pulling out onto the racetrack.
You know, Bob, Lake Speed cut his racing eye teeth at a high-banked half-mile paved racetrack in Jackson, Mississippi. There are 3 high banks up in the north in Winchester, Indiana, Salem, Indiana, and Dayton that used to get a lot of attention. But there is still a high-banked half-mile paved track in the south at Jackson that is a real tough racetrack, and Lake Speed has won a lot of races there, including a couple last year in 1983 on weekends off from Grand National racing.
Well, there is an example of a walking wounded race car. Ron Bouchard, number 47. He is back out there after having an accident earlier in the race.
I've seen cars going down a boulevard on the highway that do a little bit of a dog trot, but I don't think I've ever seen a race car. Look at that thing. Ron Bouchard is holding on for dear life, but it's working. He's staying out there. You know, at this point in the race, we've watched so many speeding cars, I don't think we appreciate how fast they're going. They're still reaching the guys in the racing lane. There's Joe Ruttman on the left-hand side. 170 miles an hour just before they shut off going into turn 1 and turn 3. So somebody like Bouchard is still probably going well above 120, 130 miles per hour. They're doing a fine job keeping those cars out. There's a lot of fun.
This isn't a demolition derby. It is a typical race at Darlington Raceway where the cars get battered and the racing is tremendous. And we have completed 330 laps. We'll be back with more on ESPN. We welcome you back to Darlington, where Darrell Waltrip continues to hold on to the lead. Terry Labonte running in second place, and Phil Elliott is third. Fourth is Cale Yarborough, a lap down. Fifth is Dale Earnhardt, also a lap down. And sixth is Harry Gant, a lap down. Seventh, 2 laps down, Richard Petty, then Phil Parsons, Ricky Rudd, and Trevor Boyes. Those are the top 10. In 11th position is Bobby Hillin, and 12th is Jimmy Means in car number 52.
As we look at Tommy Gale coming up here, here are some of the other people who are still on the racetrack. Dave Marcus, Joe Ruttman, Bobby Allison, Clark Dwyer, D.K. Ulrich, Greg Sachs, Ron Bouchard, and Buddy Arrington. There's Tommy Gale, the guy who at the end of 1983 said he was going to retire from active racing, and I guess Elmo Langley has talked him out of it again. But Tommy Gale, like Jimmy Means and Buddy Arrington, part of the people who make Grand National stock car racing what it is, and really part of the essence of the sport. They come every week realistically without a chance, without a good chance, let's say, for victory. But they come because they like the sport, because they're dedicated, they like to participate, they enjoy the people, and they know that they are very much a part of the racing scene. They, to a very high degree, are a good reason why Grand National stock car racing is exciting as it is, with the full fields every week.
You know, something else I think we ought to talk about is the fact that many people don't consider race drivers as athletes. These guys started at 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's now 5:34 on the East Coast. There was a 28-minute break for rain. But when you battle a race car around a track like this for 4 hours or 4.5 hours, you have got to have some athletic ability to you. There's no question about that.
And it's been a humid day. There's been a lot of humidity in the air. It gets very hot inside of one of these race cars. And this is not an easy place. It's hard enough to sit in a pleasure car and drive around for 4.5 hours. But here, not only is there the physical exertion, but the emotional and the mental exertion. You have to concentrate every single split second at a time out there when you're on this racetrack in particular. When you think of the treacherous racetracks in Grand National racing, I guess Rockingham and Darlington come to mind. This is one tough place, and to be out here for 4.5, 5 hours, that's quite an athletic statement for a man.
Terry Labonte is only 1.3 seconds behind Darrell Waltrip. Despite the fact that Terry Labonte's car continues to smoke, he is standing on the gas and closing in on the leader, Darrell Waltrip. The lead now a little over 1 second.
We have about 55 laps to go.
No, 27.
Oh, glad you caught that.
We're at 340.
It's getting dark and the scoreboard is becoming one big blur. 340, 27 laps to go. Can Labonte catch up? Labonte does seem to be moving in. Bob, I can't figure out the smoke.
No, I can't either. We thought it was tires. I don't think it's tires, but it seems to be getting worse. And if it's getting worse, it seems like he would be slowing down, but he isn't.
He certainly is not slowing down. Terry Labonte has one of his 2 Grand National stock car wins at this racetrack. He won the Southern 500 here a few years ago. Remember that he won at Rockingham on ESPN last year. And Labonte's got to be thinking right now he's got a real shot at his 3rd victory.
He is the leader again in point standings this year so far, with the total earnings in 1984 of $92,600. Last year, he earned over $300,000, and in his career, he's above the $1 million mark. As a matter of fact, over $1.5 million in career earnings for Terry Labonte. And the interval this time,
1.36 seconds.
That's about what it was last lap. So perhaps Darrell isn't pulling away, but at the same time, Labonte isn't letting Darrell get very far out of his sight.
Strategy. What do you think? Both standing on it, giving it all they can, all they have?
Oh, and I absolutely think so, yeah. And I also think that Darrell Waltrip can win this race if everything holds together for him. Now, Cale Yarborough is running in 4th spot right now, despite the fact that he is a lap down. Cale is one of the fastest drivers on the track at this point. Let's go down to Dick Berggren, who will give us some further insight into the Yarborough run today.
And I surely would not discount the possibility that Cale Yarborough, in fact, might win this race. All afternoon, Cale Yarborough has run at just about the same pace as the leaders. Recall, early in the day, he had a tire equalize on him, so he had to make an unscheduled pit stop to change all 4 tires. That put him down a lap. He has spent the rest of the day trying to make up that lap. Now, here's the scenario in order for Yarborough to be able to win. He has got to pass the present leader, and then if he's lucky, he'll get a yellow flag, which will close him up behind the leaders, and then he's got a legitimate shot at it. He has got some of the most incredible luck of anybody in racing, and I surely would not count him out. Incidentally, that is the same car that ESPN viewers saw Cale Yarborough win the Michigan race in last August.
All right, so off the 4th turn, Waltrip comes once again, and the interval between himself and Terry Labonte is still just about 1.3 or 4 seconds. We'll be back with more live coverage from Darlington. Less than 20 laps to go. Darrell Waltrip leads the TranSouth 500 with Terry Labonte second, Bill Elliott third. A lap down, Cale Yarborough and Dale Earnhardt in 4th and 5th. In 6th place, a lap down, is Harry Gant. Then 2 laps down, 7th place, Richard Petty. 8th place, Phil Parsons. 9th, Ricky Rudd. And 10th, Trevor Boys.
Well, as we watch Waltrip with 40 laps to go by my count, but really they're less than 20. We've already established that. We remind you that ESPN will be back here for the Southern 500 later this year. We will be at the Pocono racetrack up in Pennsylvania twice. We'll be back at North Wilkesboro, and we have 1 of the 2 Michigan races. So keep those events in mind as you're watching Grand National Stock Car Racing here on ESPN today.
And our next live race on ESPN will be in the month of June, and that will be a kart race at the Milwaukee Mile in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Well, the Wrangler cars are together on the racetrack out there, with Dale Earnhardt leading Ricky Rudd through turn number 3. Now the main straightaway is Dale Earnhardt driving car number 3. Dale is in 5th position, a lap down, and Rudd is further back than that. He is 2 or 3 laps off of the lead. We've been talking a lot about the Terry Labonte situation and the smoke that we have noticed coming from that car. Dick Berggren is down in the pit area with some information on that. Dick?
The situation down here, according to Dale Inman, Terry Labonte's crew chief, is that a front seal is leaking slightly, and it's causing a small amount of oil to drop back and hit the exhaust headers. Now, if a front seal is leaking, it can leak all day, all week, and it won't cause a problem. Very little oil can come out of there, so it should not cause Labonte or anybody else any serious problems as the day wears on.
Okay, I appreciate your effort in that matter. You can see clearly how smoke is coming from the rear end of that car, but it appears to be not slowing down Terry Labonte in the least.
The Grand National drivers and teams will get a week off after this race. They travel to Martinsville, Virginia in 2 weeks for the Sovereign Bank 500. there, and then they move back to the super speedways. The first weekend in May, they'll be at Talladega. So if they get a break after this one, and I tell you, with all the fenders we've ripped off and the length of this race, they're going to need 2 weeks to recover.
The interval between Darrell Waltrip and Terry Labonte is still just about 1.3 seconds. We are closing in on the final stages of this race now with 354 out of 367 laps completed. There is the interval between first and second position, and right behind Terry Labonte is Cale Yarborough. Back with more live coverage from Darlington after these messages. Darlington, and what was a 1.3-second lead is now a 3.3-second lead for Darrell Waltrip. This is what happened to Terry Labonte.
Well, he was following Trevor Boyes, and something broke in the tail end of Trevor Boyes' car. Trevor began to slide up towards the outside wall. Neither one of them panicked. Terry didn't panic, Trevor didn't panic, nor did Cale behind him, and everybody got through. But what it cost Terry Labonte was about a second and a half, maybe as much as 2 seconds.
Billy Hagan is down in the pit area with our Dick Berggren.
And I'm with Billy Hagan. He's the car runner for Terry Labonte. Billy, you were upset just a minute ago.
Yes, that squirrel in that 40 car got right up in the line. He was a number of laps down. He wouldn't move over and let us go by. Then he blew the engine right in front of us. He almost took us out, and most certainly kept us from catching Darrell to win the race.
That's the way Billy Hagan sees it. Car runner for Terry Labonte.
Trevor Boyes' defense, it did look like that he did lose an engine on that car because it did start to smoke very, very badly, and Trevor did keep from spinning the car, and a good job of driving also by Labonte and by Cale Yarborough.
Well, if you're new to racing, though, it is fair to point out that particularly down at the end of the race, if you are a lap car, you are to move over and yield to the people going after victory. So if indeed what occurred suggested by Billy Hagan, then maybe there's cause for concern. But for the time being, this guy looks like he's ready to move into the win column on a super speedway for the first time since October of 1982. As races at Darlington go, now he's not going to tell you this, he'll never admit it, this is easy for him. He has been in the right place at the right time all day long.
That's right. Something has happened to everybody else, it seems like, but Darrell Waltrip, and that's what it takes to win a race, in addition to the ability of driving the car and the ability to prepare one. 5 laps to go, and the TranSouth 500 will be history. And here comes Waltrip off of turn number 4. We'll catch the interval here between first and second once again. There, Waltrip crosses the line, and Labonte now also crosses the line. It's about 3 seconds. So Waltrip with a little bit of breathing room now between looking back in his rearview mirror for second position. Bill Elliott, meanwhile, continues to run in third, and he's about a half a lap behind Terry Labonte. So I don't think we're going to have a side-by-side finish to this one, but we have seen enough action in this race to make up for that, certainly.
We could probably put together an annual highlights package between today and yesterday at this racetrack. Don't you believe that Waltrip was thinking about this race a year ago? He really didn't have to see Harry Gant, by the way, in his rearview mirror as he did a couple of laps ago, because Harry Gant was the guy that ended up beating Darrell last year when his car petered out on him just a couple of laps from the end. Darrell got this far in this race last year, and then it all came to kind of a whimpering end. It was like a puppy putting its tail between its legs and running home after a fight.
And it can happen again, there's no doubt about that, but we now have 365 in the book with 2 laps to go. The white flag will come out next time around. Waltrip moving to the outside of Dave Marcus in car number 75 in turns 1 and 2. Now Waltrip backing off the accelerator just a little bit as Marcus came off of turn number 2. Now Darrell stands on the gas and passes Marcus easily in the back straightaway into turn number 3 once again. As Darrell Waltrip comes off of turn number 4, he'll be seeing the white flag from Harold Kinder. The car is miraculously clean and unscathed compared to some of the other cars that are still in competition out there. The white comes out, and it's 1 more lap for Darrell Waltrip.
A sigh of relief. That was the one he wanted to get by. The 1-2 laps in the finish. Now he's behind Jimmy Means, and Clark Dwyer swings that car to the outside, going down the back. Car number 3 hits the brakes for the last time, keeps it right in the middle of right down and almost to the apron, lets it slide up and looks for four.
Darrell Waltrip out of turn number 4 onto the straightaway, and the checkered flag falls. Darrell Waltrip has won the TranSouth 500. Terry Labonte finishes in second position, about 3 seconds behind, and Bill Elliott will be shown in third place. Well, the Junior Johnson crew congratulating each other on another win. There's Junior, not looking all that exuberant and thrilled about the situation, but I'm sure down deep inside he is.
Well, he approaches automobile racing like a business. He's a technician. He's a skilled mechanic. And I think he's very serious about what he does. He's won so many times that, knowing Junior Johnson, he's probably already thinking about what they could have done to go faster this time and look ahead toward the next race.
Well, Darrell Waltrip heads for victory lane, and Dick Bergeron will be there to talk with him after we pause for this message. The TranSouth 500 is over, and Darrell Waltrip is the winner.
We're in victory lane with Darrell Waltrip. Darrell, your love-hate relationship with this place must be pretty positively on the love side right now.
It was a great day for us, and I'm tired, I tell you that. I raced last night in Nashville, Tennessee, run second in my V6. Say hello, everybody back home, and thank God for a safe race and a great day.
Everybody else's car looks like it ought to belong in a junkyard. Yours is hardly nicked.
Oh, it's the way I drove it, I guess. I kind of creeped around all day.
Darrell Waltrip, second last night at Nashville, first here today at Darlington.
Congratulations, Darrell. And the streak that we talked about in the early going of the race is over. We have a repeat winner in Darrell Waltrip. The TranSouth 500 has been brought to you by Skoal Bandage for tobacco pleasure without lighting up. It's a patch instead of a puff. And by AC Delco, General Motors Corporation replacement parts for just about anything that moves. AC Delco, the smart parts. And by Pontiac. Test drive a new Pontiac at your Pontiac dealer, because at Pontiac, we build excitement. Thanks to Dick Bergeron and Larry Newber. Here are the top 5 as we say so long from the TranSouth 500 in Darlington, South Carolina. This is Bob Jenkins saying so long, everyone.